Chapter 333. When Gohan left Tomono Kakaze's room, an Angora rabbit jumped out of a closet and landed on Tomono Kakaze's table. "You've worked hard, Tibby." Tomono Kakaze picked Tibby up and placed him on her head. "Tibby, our dreams can finally come true. We'll be free soon." In a dirty room full of spots left behind by an unknown liquid, two little mice were discussing how to deal with Gohan. "Auntie Guogua, please help Xiaoya." Not too long ago, Xiaoya had always despised the filth of this room, as well as the thick stench. However, this time, Xiaoya had stayed in this room for almost an hour. She even hugged Auntie Guogua's body without a care in the world, as she sincerely begged. "Seriously, if your mother finds out that I helped you, she'll definitely kill me." Guogua blew out a ring of smoke. "Our teacher once said this about your mother and I. She said that I have a sharp tongue, and your mother has a sharp heart." Guogua's words had a deep meaning to them. Unfortunately, Xiaoya, the little girl, could not understand the meaning behind these words. Her mind was filled with the matter of being an admiral. She was thinking about the incomparably dazzling life of a noble lady. Seeing Xiaoya's unconcerned expression, Guogua knew that this little girl didn't listen to her words at all. In fact, this little girl was very similar to her when she was young. Both of them wanted to live a decent life, but in the end, they ended up in this situation. "Little girl, get out. I won't help you with this matter. If I help you, your mother will kill me." Guogua waved her hand and was about to chase Xiaoya out of her room. "Auntie Guogua, are you afraid that your mother will kill you? Aren't you afraid that your mother will kill herself?" Xiaoya's eyes flashed. This little girl didn't seem to be completely stupid. "What do you mean by that?" Guogua frowned. This little girl was even more difficult to deal with than she had imagined. "Aunt Guogua, if you chase Xiaoya out, Xiaoya will jump out of the window. If I can't do this, Xiaoya would rather die here." Xiaoya began to use her own life to threaten Guogua. This kind of woman was the most annoying. She didn't have any other abilities, but she would use her own life to threaten others. Furthermore, she didn't even have the ability to threaten strangers. She could only threaten family members who cared about her. Who cared about strangers? If they died, then they died. As long as I didn't kill them, it had nothing to do with me. However, it just so happened that this method was incomparably effective against family members. Even a woman like Guogua would feel a headache when she saw this situation. She could tell from the look in Xiaoya's eyes that this little girl was not lying. In order to achieve her goal, she had gone crazy. However, she could not watch when Mayun's daughter die. She was not that heartless. "Have you really made up your mind? There isn't a single good man. If one day he loses interest in you, then you will instantly lose everything you desire. In this room of mine, there are no less than 20 women like this. They were all chased out like trash by those sword-bearers after they got tired of playing with them. They can only live here like walking corpses. Have you really made up your mind?" The women that Guogua spoke of were all women who were once doted on by the sword-bearers. As they aged, or for some other reason, they lost the favor of the sword-bearers and were chased out of their homes. In the eyes of those sword-bearers, these women were no different from trash. Some of the more despicable sword-bearers would even use the last bit of wealth on these women before they were chased out. Before they met Guogua, they were already at their wits' end and were in the state of walking corpses. Guogua had once saved a woman like this. She had taken off all her clothes and laid down in a deep alley. She had her arms and legs stretched out, allowing the men who came and went to spray their bodily fluids on her body. She did not say a word, nor did she move at all. She was completely like an abandoned inflatable doll. If it wasn't for the fact that the men who came and went were afraid of losing such a free toy, they would have bought some food and forcefully stuffed it into her mouth. She would probably have died long ago. Guogua saw that she was pitiful, so she brought her back to her home. She lived like a living corpse for half a year. In the end, she silently died on the bed, which made Guogua sigh endlessly. There were more than 10 women like this in Guogua's house. They were either living corpses, waiting to die every day, or living unrestrained lives, shuttling back and forth between men every day, trampling on their bodies. In short, not a single one of them lived like a human being. Guogua was speaking from the bottom of her heart. She really did not want Xiaoye to walk the path of those women. Perhaps she could rely on her young body to live a wealthy life for a while, but in the end it would inevitably be all for naught. Auntie Guogua, your view is too one-sided and too extreme. Xiaoye suddenly revealed a very serious expression and tried her best to persuade Guogua. There are actually not many bad male sword-bearers like you described. Out of 100 women, only 1 in 10 will end up like that. Most women, even if they are not loved by men, men will still care about old relationships and give them a comfortable life. Occasionally, they will even give them a little rain. This kind of ending is normal. The example you gave is a little too extreme. Xiaoye's words were logical and logical. Guogua suddenly found herself speechless. That was because what Guogua said was indeed the truth. Women who were as unlucky as the ones she had taken in were only special cases. It was just like when you were studying. Your mother often taught you that children from poor families didn't have lights, books, notebooks, or pens, but they relied on their own willpower to study hard and become the top scholar in so-and-so city or so-and-so province. Therefore, it was easier for children to study in a tough environment. I should have thrown you into a poor place and let you suffer a little so that you would know the benefits of studying. A tough environment was the place to cultivate talent. I gave you such good living conditions, but I made you not want to study anymore. Therefore, they came to the conclusion that it was easier for children who loved to study to be born in a tough environment. These words sounded very reasonable, but in reality, they were completely wrong. How could a child who lived in a tough environment learn better than a child who came from a superior family? This was a completely wrong thing to deceive people. The simplest reason was to compare the academic performance of a child who came from a tough family with a child who came from a superior family and a child who came from a poor family. Then you would know the truth. In fact, children who lived in a tough environment were more likely to drop out of school. They didn't want to study at all. Instead, they wanted to enter society early. It could be said that most children from poor families didn't want to study at all after finishing high school or junior high school. They just wanted to leave the countryside early and start a new life. Of course, there were a small number of smart children who knew that knowledge could change their fate. They would study hard hundreds of times harder than the children from a superior family and get into a famous university. But such examples were too rare, so rare that they could be considered news. A city child from a superior family who got into Peking University or a child from a poor family who got into Peking University. Which one was more newsworthy? Even if you used your butt to think, you would know. Naturally, the media liked to report such inspirational stories. Wasn't it a matter of course for a student who ate brain platinum every day and used Nutrition Express to get into a famous university? As a result, the media would report all the news about children from poor families who got into a tough family through their own efforts and diligence. When people saw such news, they would naturally think that it was easier to produce talents from poor families. This was all bullsh*t. It was easier to get into a famous university if one came from a superior family. For example, if you saw a news today about an old man who fell to the ground and a child who helped the old man up, but the old man extorted a large sum of medical expenses, you would sigh that all the bad people in this world had become old, and the conscience of the old people had become very bad. But in reality, most of the old people would not do such immoral things. But in this case, there was no newsworthy news at all. Only the news of the old man being extorted after he helped him up could be considered newsworthy. It was estimated that out of 1,000 cases of extortion, 100 of them would be reported by the enthusiastic media. Think about it, in a big country like China, there were only 100 or so such news reports every year. Among the hundreds of millions of old people, there were a few thousand scum. Wasn't this a very normal thing? What was so strange about this? It would be strange if these old people didn't exist. There was also the matter of tourists visiting the Great Wall. You only saw a few thousand people visiting the Great Wall, but you didn't see the tens of millions of people leaving nothing on the Great Wall. It was like a black dot on a piece of white paper. People's attention was always on the black dot, but they didn't see how pure and flawless the whole piece of white paper was. Alright, back to the main topic. While Guogua was stunned by Xiaoya said something earth-shattering that made Guogua feel inferior. Those women who are hated by men just don't work hard enough. They don't know how to create something that attracts men's desire. Something like tearing open a man's thigh is something that any woman can do, so men will naturally feel disgusted. Xiaoya wants to develop something that other women don't have. Only then can she capture men's hearts forever. What do you want to develop? Guogua was stunned, and she asked weakly. Auntie Guogua, what do you think about uniform temptation? Xiaoya said excitedly. Chapter 334. Gu Han exited the game space in a fatigued state, and Heavenly Reliance followed suit. Ever since meeting I Ching, Yi Tian had been in a state of silence. She locked herself in her room and was quiet, which was rare. Gohan was also exhausted. It was already around 5 o'clock in the morning. There were less than 8 hours left before the command challenge that he had agreed with Yaoguang. In these 8 hours, Gohan could only sleep for 3 hours at most. In the remaining 5 hours, Gohan still needed to carefully study the details of the entire challenge. Although Gohan had a rough plan in his mind, there were many details that had to be considered clearly. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would fall short of success. As a result, as soon as Gohan closed his eyes, a small body crawled to Gohan's side and burrowed into Gohan's arms. She mumbled in a daze, "Gohan, you're back? Chinpin almost fell asleep waiting for you. Has this cute little thing been waiting for me to sleep?" Gohan felt touched and hurriedly hugged Chinpin into his arms. As for I Ching's warning about Chinpin's crisis to Gohan, it instantly disappeared from his mind. How could Gohan bear to give away his beloved Chinpin? He wanted to keep Chinpin by his side forever. With this thought in mind, Gohan slowly fell into a dream box until he was awakened by an itch on his nose. "Brother, you're awake." Gohan opened his eyes and saw Gu Yun sitting on him. She was holding a piece of white cotton cloth in her hand and rubbing it against Gohan's nose. No wonder Gohan felt his nostrils itch so badly. But why, in the center of this white cloth, was there a patch of blood? Seeing this, Gohan's forehead was filled with black lines. How was this some kind of white cotton cloth? It was clearly something used by women, and it was King used and stained with blood. When Maiyun was probably the only one in the family who knew how to use such a thing. This Gu Yun, where did she find such a thing? Wen Maiyun, take Gu Yun to take a bath. Gohan said loudly to Wen Maiyun, who was in the living room. Wen Maiyun hurriedly ran in. When she saw the thing in Gu Yun's hand, her face suddenly turned red. She hurriedly wanted to snatch the thing back and quickly throw it into the trash basket. When Maiyun made up her mind, she would immediately empty the trash basket, even if it was only filled with less than 1/10 of the trash. "Maiyun, bring Gu Yun to take a bath. She's not clean after touching that kind of thing." Gohan suddenly remembered that his nose seemed to have been harassed by that thing for a long time. He immediately got up from the bed, went to the closet to find a new set of clothes, and planned to take a shower in the small bathroom in his bedroom. "Right, what time is it now?" Gohan asked casually. He found that the sky outside was very bright, and it did not look like it was 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. "It's 11:30 in the morning now, master. Do you need something to eat?" When Maiyun thought that Gohan was hungry, Gohan's face stiffened, and the movements of his hands became faster. He actually slept until 11:30, and there was less than an hour and a half before the battle with Yaoguang began. He did not need to prepare for the details. He did not even know how much strength Yaoguang's subordinates had. He had to immediately enter the game and understand the most basic combat strength. Gohan ran into the bathtub as if he was flying, and it took him less than 5 minutes to finish his bath. Then, he rushed out of the bathroom, connected his personal terminal, and entered the game. After 23 hours of commanding the battle, the moment Gohan came out of the game, he was so tired that he collapsed. He had only slept for a few hours before commanding the battle. In the end, he had commanded the battle with high intensity for more than 20 hours, and even participated in the frontline battle for 2 hours. His entire body was emptied of sword essence, and only then did he seize the final opportunity to turn the tables and seize the everlasting autumn water sex formation. Throughout the entire process, Gohan could be said to have given his all, squeezing out every last bit of his blood and sweat. Therefore, the moment his head touched the pillow, Gohan immediately fell asleep. He did not waste even a second. Once Gohan fell asleep, he did not care about anything else. However, the forum was in an uproar. Over 1 million people watched the thrilling battle through the live stream. That was especially so when the Yaoguang sword sect, which had less than 2,000 people left, faced the 9 provinces sword sect's main force that had suddenly appeared. Everyone thought that the Yaoguang sword sect would definitely lose. In their opinion, Gohan had used that miraculous move to trap and kill all 5,000 sword-bearers from the Great Waves of Azure Waves sect in one fell swoop. He was already the strongest person to dig traps in history. He was a godlike commander. Even if he were to lose to Long Yu's ultimate killer move, it would still be a glorious defeat. After all, the difference in strength between the Yaoguang sword sect and the Great Waves of Azure Waves sect's reinforcements was 4 times that of the everlasting Autumn Water and Great Waves sect's reinforcement. Even if Minister Ji Jin were to command the battle back then, he would not be able to match up to the military governor's command. There was no shame in losing. Even if the Yaoguang sword sect would lose some of the sect's resources, it would not matter. Many of the spectators had decided to join the Yaoguang sword sect and help the Yaoguang sword sect tide through this difficult time. Then, under the military governor's command, they would once again challenge the everlasting autumn water. That was the battle that men should participate in. However, they never expected that, in the face of such a desperate situation, the military governor would actually lead the remaining 2,000 men to tide through. They would never forget the scene of the military governor leading his 2 sword maidens at the forefront. Even when facing the encirclement of over 100 men, he remained calm and collected. He killed off all of them and used brute force to kill off the 3,000 sword-bearers from the 9 provinces sword sect who had been conserving their strength. None of the spectators would ever forget how, at the end of the battle, there were only less than 300 people left in the Yaoguang sword sect. Everlasting Autumn Water had resurrected over 1,000 men and stood in front of the 300 men from the Yaoguang sword sect. However, not a single one of them dared to step forward and fight. They were all suppressed by the military governor's imposing manner and did not dare to step forward. Like courtiers standing on both sides of the throne room, they watched as Gohan walked into the core of the formation and shattered the formation's eye with a single sword strike. This is a super battle that will forever be recorded in the history of Sword Maiden Online. A famous commentator of Sword Maiden Online said, "This is a battle that involves both superb strategy and a clash of brute force." His commander, the military governor, told us that this is his era, just like the era of Yaoguang 20 years ago and the era of Ogen 10 years ago. Now we will usher in the era of the military governor. There was also a player with great prestige in the game who wrote such word. This player was an immortal sword rank sword bearer in the game. In reality, he was also a famous sword rank sword bearer. He was known for his honesty and sharpness in his words. He wrote as such: "When the military governor became the first person in the King of Yu Go Jian instance dungeon, I thought he was just a lucky guy. Later, when he led the Yaoguang Sword Sect's team to defeat the invincible Dugu's great waves of Kanglan, I didn't think much of it. Because according to my information, the Yaoguang Sword Sect had already started the instance dungeon a month ago, and the Great Waves of Kanglan was only 2 days old. I think the Great Waves of Kanglan was just unlucky. They wanted to maintain their unparalleled record too much. If you always walk by the river, your shoes will eventually get wet. Before watching the live broadcast of this challenge, my conclusion about the military governor was that he was a lucky kid with a little bit of smarts and a little background. To be honest, I didn't think much of him. When I found out that he became the commander of the Yaoguang Sword Sect, I suspected that he might be the illegitimate child of Yaoguang. This wasn't a joke. It wasn't an exaggeration to give birth to your own child at the age of 18. But now, I completely understand how good Yaoguang's foresight is. Without the military governor's command, I reckon that the Yaoguang Sword Sect would have been in chaos by now. Let's go back to the military governor. A person with such great intellect is already a very scary thing, but this person has an even stronger combat ability. I thought of a proposition in the history field. They hypothesized that if there was a person with the intellect of Zhuge Liang and the martial arts of Lu Bu, what kind of person would that be? Now, I think I can find the answer to this question. The military governor is such a person. Finally, I still have to admire one more person, and that is the commander of Eternal Autumn Water, Long Yu. Although he had failed, no one should underestimate this character. His details might not be as good as his master, young Master Ba Yun, but his view of the big picture and cunning had already surpassed his master's. In time, he would definitely become a terrifying character, and he would be able to dominate an era with more than enough time. It's a pity that he was born in the same era as the military governor, which doomed him to a tragic end. There were many similar comments on the internet. All in all, this battle had made the military governor a god in many people's hearts. Before this battle, there might have been 2 evenly matched parties arguing about whether the military governor could lead this era. After this battle, all of the arguments had already vanished like smoke in thin air. This era was destined to belong to the admiral. Chapter 335. Guhan slept for a total of 48 hours, which was equivalent to 2 days and 2 nights. When he woke up, he felt that he was full of energy, and the sword essence in his body seemed to be rejoicing. Now is the time to reopen my meridians. Guhan's eyes lit up, and he went straight to the training room to reopen his meridians. As expected, this time, Guhan's reopening of his meridians was like divine help. Wherever his thoughts went, all the meridians opened up instantly, and Guhan almost effortlessly reopened most of his meridians. When only the meridians needed for the last 2 sword techniques of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven were left, Guhan suddenly felt an intense dizziness. Oh no, could this be the legendary Qi deviation? Guhan recalled some historical records from before the Great Calamity. It was said that when practicing ancient martial arts, it was extremely easy to enter a state of cultivation deviation if one wasn't careful. Moreover, the faster one cultivated, the easier it was to enter a state of cultivation deviation. Guhan hurriedly withdrew all the sword essence into his purple mansion, and then he heard a rumbling sound from his stomach. So it's because I'm hungry. Guhan's face flushed red. What Qi deviation? It was because his stomach was too hungry that it made him feel dizzy. After leaving the Heroes Begin with Insignificance Instance Dungeon, he had rested for 8 hours and spent more than 20 hours commanding the challenge. He had slept for another 48 hours, and now he had practiced for more than 10 hours. In total, he had slept for more than 90 hours, which meant that he had not eaten for more than 4 days. It was normal for him to feel dizzy from hunger. Wait, it's already been more than 90 hours. It's been more than 4 days? Guhan was shocked. He suddenly remembered that he had promised Zetianjiandi's soul fragment in the game that he would set off for Chongyang Mountain in 5 days to find what Zetianjiendi left for him. Doesn't that mean that there's less than a day left? No, I can't delay any longer. This is important to unravel Zetianjiandi's secret. I have to go to Chongyang Mountain. Gohan immediately left the training room and ordered Wen Meiyun loudly. Meiyun, prepare 10 sets of clothes and daily necessities for me immediately. Also, prepare a month's worth of food for me. It doesn't need to be too complicated, just some rice balls, salted vegetables, and steaks. The faster, the better. Wait, get me something to eat first, I'm about to faint from hunger. Gohan rattled on, but when Meiyun didn't respond, Gohan was puzzled. He walked into the living room and saw Wen Meiyun sitting on a chair with her head lowered, as if she was crying. Gohan quickly walked to Wen Meiyun's side and held her chin. He tilted it up and saw that Wen Meiyun's face was covered in sparkling tears. She had already cried into a tearful mess. Master! Wen Meiyun was shocked when she saw Gohan's face. She thought that Gohan would stay in the training room for a while longer, so she lost her usual vigilance and didn't serve her master at all times. Wen Meiyun was so flustered that she wanted to kneel down and apologize. Master, Meiyun was wrong. Meiyun was distracted and didn't pay attention. Shut up, I don't want to hear this nonsense. Gohan scolded. What happened to you? Did someone bully you? No. I really didn't. Wen Meiyun shook her head vigorously. It's just that some sand got into Meiyun's eyes. Meiyun was blinded by the sand. That's right, Meiyun was blinded by the sand. You're also in your 30s. Why don't you even know how to lie? Gohan snorted coldly. I want to hear the truth. Then tell me the truth, or get out of here. I won't leave a maid in my house who hides anything from the master. Yes, master. When Meiyun hesitated for a moment, then gritted her teeth and said, Something happened to Meiyun's daughter, Xiaoya. Just now, the school called to say that there were 2 students who fought with Xiaoya. In the end, Xiaoya fell from the window on the 3rd floor. Both of her legs were broken. Meiyun was worried about Xiaoya's safety, so she secretly cried. So that's how it is. Gohan nodded. All of Wen Meiyun's thoughts and goals to live were on her daughter, Xiaoya. Her daughter had 2 broken legs, so it was normal for her to be sad. Don't cry. Didn't I give you a sum of money? Just treat it as a loan. Go and send Xiaoya to the hospital's medical pod. She'll recover after a night's rest. I guarantee that her legs will be better than before they were broken. For an illness like a broken leg, the hospital's medical pod would charge 100,000 to 200,000. Gohan guessed that when Meiyun did not have enough money on her, so he took the initiative to speak. As his exclusive maid, loyalty was the most important thing. A small favor could buy Wen Meiyun's loyalty to him. This was a very good deal. Hearing Gohan's words, Wen Meiyun immediately shook her head. Master, Wen Meiyun doesn't lack money. If I could use the medical pod to cure Xiaoya's illness, Meiyun wouldn't be hiding here crying. It's just that Xiaoya was born a pureblood, so she can't enter the medical pod. Your daughter is actually a pureblood. Gohan was shocked. The so-called pureblood was a modern human's atavistic bloodline, returning to the human bloodline before the apocalypse. Pureblood. It sounded very impressive. Unfortunately, it was of no use at all. In human history, there were at least 1,000 purebloods like this. After serious research, scientists came to the conclusion that purebloods would never be able to become sword-bearers. Their genes lacked a genetic sequence known as the sword-wielding gene. Humans without this genetic sequence would never be able to synchronize with the sword lady. It was the same logic as a man being able to change into a woman, but it was impossible for him to get pregnant. After a series of bold hypotheses and deductions, the scientists concluded that at the time of the Great Apocalypse, a mysterious force had added sword-wielding genes into the human genome, allowing talented humans to become sword-wielders and fight against the Yuan Ho. Then, the children of humans with the sword-wielding gene would also inherit the sword-wielding gene. This way, the entire human race would have the sword-wielding gene, but it wasn't absolute. Occasionally, there would be people like Xiaoya, reverting to their ancestry and becoming human children without the sword-wielding gene. However, this wasn't a big deal. After all, people like Xiaoya were rare. They could just treat it as raising a panda. Oh, you're asking why this gene is called the sword-wielding gene? The reason was simple. Only with this gene could one become a sword wielder. As the name suggested, it was called the sword-wielding gene. It was simple, easy to remember, and perfect. However, there was another disadvantage without the sword-wielding gene. Some of the advanced technology of humans couldn't be used on them. For example, the medical pod. Its medical principles were directly used on the sword-wielding gene. Without the sword-wielding gene, the medical pod wouldn't have any effect on Xiaoya. Hence, Xiaoya could only use traditional medical methods to treat her short legs. At this moment, both of Xiaoya's legs were probably wrapped in plaster casts, with wooden planks and bandages wrapped around them. Then, she was hung up. It was also because of this that when Maiden couldn't help but cry. To a mother, not being able to be by her daughter's side during her most painful time was a huge torture. More importantly, because there were too few purebloods, even the bandage treatment method had to be figured out by the hospital's doctors on the spot. The hospital didn't have any ordinary patient beds to accommodate Xiaoya. In addition, Xiaoya's fracture didn't require any special care. She only needed to rest and change her dressing. Hence, the doctors sent Xiaoya home to recuperate. However, when Maiden knew very well how terrible the living conditions at Guogua's place were. In such an environment, once the bacteria invaded Xiaoya's body, wouldn't it be like adding another illness before she had recovered? Hence, when Maiden felt sad and anxious, she wanted to fly to her daughter's side immediately, but she couldn't let go of Guhan's matter. Go and take care of your daughter. Guhan could see the conflict in Wenmeiun's heart. He decisively said to Wenmeiun, I'm going to go on a long journey soon. You can go and take care of your daughter. Thank you, Master. But Master, what about Miss Guyun? She's so young and you can't keep her by your side. Miss Guyun is so lively. If you don't have Maiden to look after her, I'm afraid. Wenmeiun said it very tactfully. What she meant was that Guyun was too jumpy, running into the fish tank every day to catch fish to eat. Maybe there was something wrong with her, and she would jump out of the window to catch fish to eat. In short, Guyun needed someone to look after her. Guhan pondered for a moment. Wenmeiun's words made sense. Guyun really needed someone to take care of her. If he wasn't in such a rush, Guhan could go to the maid service center to get his second exclusive maid. However, Guhan was in a hurry to go to Chongyang Mountain. He didn't have time to go to the maid service center to pick a maid. Even if he picked one, he wouldn't be able to trust the new maid's character without spending a lot of time with her. What if something happened to her taking care of Gu Yun alone? It seemed that when Maiden really couldn't leave Guhan's house for a while. How about this? Why don't you bring your daughter in? Guhan hesitated. He had seen Xiaoya before. She was a quiet and shy girl who would protect her mother. Such a girl wouldn't do anything to his family, right? Guhan didn't know that after a short period of training, this girl's character had completely changed into a scheming bitch and a red tea bitch. What? You're asking why she's not a green tea bitch? What a joke. Xiaoya had decided to be faithful to one man. If she dared to make a living sword-bearer a cuckold, she, Xiaoya, wouldn't be able to live. Chapter 336. When Maiden wanted to reject Guhan's arrangement at first, but when she thought of her daughter's pitiful state, she couldn't bring herself to reject. She wasn't the kind of woman who pretended to refuse when she clearly wanted something in her heart. Therefore, after hesitating for a while, when Maiden nodded in agreement, she secretly made up her mind that she must serve Guhan wholeheartedly and be a good maid to Guhan. All right, courier, help me get some food, and then prepare a simple month's worth of food. I'm going on a long trip, so I'll leave the matters at home to you. Gu-han patted Wen Meiyun's shoulder and gestured for Wen Meiyun to prepare according to his orders. Wen Meiyun nodded. When she was about to leave, she suddenly thought of something. Then, she took out a cardboard box from the sofa and put it in front of Gu-han. Master, when you were sleeping, a courier came to deliver this to you. Because you were sleeping, I didn't dare to disturb you, so I signed for it on my own. Please punish me, Master. Wen Meiyun said carefully. Of course, Gu-han wouldn't punish Wen Meiyun for this kind of thing, but Gu-han was very curious about who sent this courier. Gu-han didn't have many friends. In reality, Song Hama was his only friend. Maybe Song Yifei was half a friend, but Song Yifei didn't know his home address, so it was impossible for him to deliver any courier. Could it be that this courier was sent by Song Hama? This was the first time that this guy had sent him a courier. However, when Gu-han saw the mailing address of this courier, his face changed instantly. This courier was actually sent from a small address in Yanjing City. It crossed 2 whole bay cities, a distance of thousands of kilometers, and there were countless couriers sent by Yuan Ko along the way. Such a courier would probably cost tens of thousands of yuan. Of course, money was just a small matter. Now, Gu-han didn't care about tens of thousands of yuan. What Gu-han cared about was the address in Yanjing City. Gu-han didn't know anyone in Yanjing City, so who on earth would send such a courier from Yanjing City to him? Taking a closer look at the mailing address, it was not a famous street, and an inconspicuous house number. In short, it was a very inconspicuous address. A smart person would know that this address was fake, and the real sender couldn't possibly live there. Although Gu-han was full of doubts, Gu-han knew that this kind of thing couldn't be solved by guessing, so he had to open the courier and see what was inside. Gu-han wasn't worried that there was any lethal weapon in the courier, because the Sword Committee always had a rule that was criticized by many sword holders. That was, all the courier, packages, and other things that were sent to the sword holders would be checked by the Sword Committee every day to make sure that there was no danger inside before they were sent to the sword holders. There was a sword holder who bought a bottle of de Dewey online, and his information was leaked by the staff of the Sword Committee, which made him lose face in the sword circle. Even so, most of the sword holders tacitly agreed that the Sword Committee would check their courier first. After all, this was for their safety. In the beginning, when there was no such rule, many sword bearers were blown to death after receiving a delivery bomb. There were even 2 sword bearers at the Immortal Sword tier who died in such a humiliating manner. When the sword holder didn't have a sword lady in their hand, or if they didn't release any of their sword ladies, there would be jokes of Immortal Sword tier sword holders being blown to death by ordinary bombs. Later, it was proven that this was not a deliberate murder by the elders. Instead, these Immortal Sword tier sword wielders were too arrogant and had harmed too many people. They were killed in such a ridiculous way by their enraged enemies. Because they didn't release the sword ladies, they didn't share the physical attributes of the sword ladies, and they didn't have the sword ladies' personal shields. Without these things, the sword holders were no different from ordinary people. Since then, the Sword Council had to inspect the security of the parcels sent to the sword bearers. Of course, if you had something you didn't want the Sword Council to see, you had to be more diligent. You could do it face to face, or you could do it in a way that didn't require express delivery. Only a fool would send something private through express delivery. Therefore, Gu-han could open the courier without worry. He didn't have to worry about a bomb jumping out of it. What could be inside? Gu-han quickly opened the first layer of the package. He found that it was filled with plastic foam to keep things from being shaken. There was a small box hidden inside the plastic foam. It looked like a jewelry box. This looks like a box used to keep a ring. Gu-han thought to himself, it can't be a ring. Who would be so bored as to give themselves a ring? As a result, Gu-han was slapped in the face as soon as he opened the box. Inside the ring box was indeed a ring, and it was a jade-like ring with a dark green color. Wait, why does this ring look so familiar? Gohan held the ring in his hand and looked inside and outside with a solemn expression. He finally confirmed one thing. This ring was exactly the same as the ring that I Ching's soul fragment had transformed into in the game. Or rather, it was that ring. Even with Gohan's temperament, he wanted to throw it away when he saw it. He couldn't calm down at all. Isn't this something in the game? How could it appear in the real world? Suddenly, Gohan remembered I Ching's words when they parted. Husband, Ching-er is about to disappear. After Ching-er disappears, I hope that you will give me the item that Ching-er left behind in the future. I don't want to miss even the slightest memory with you. When Gohan heard this sentence, he didn't care much. Who would care about a line from an NPC in a dungeon? So, at that time, Gohan didn't think too much about it. But now that he thought about it, Gohan shuddered. I Ching said that after she disappears, he could give the item that she left behind, which was this ring, to the real Zhijiendi in the other world. Naturally, the item in the game could not be given to the real Zhijiendi. To give it to the real Zhijiendi, it had to be something that actually existed in the real world. In other words, I Ching had long known about the ring on Gohan's hand. In reality, it would be delivered to Gohan's hand by express delivery. All of this was arranged by I Ching. Could it be that she had planned all of this 700 years ago? This shouldn't be something that Zhijiendi left behind. Someone must have been secretly carrying out all of this. That person must have been monitoring him in the dark. Once he completed the Hero's Rise from Insignificance dungeon, he would immediately send the ring to him. But after thinking about it carefully, something didn't seem right. According to what I Ching's soul fragment said, this was a crystallization of her memories with Gohan. Logically speaking, such a crystallization could not have existed before Gohan completed the Hero's Rise from Insignificance dungeon. It must have been created in the real world after the dungeon was completed. If that was the case, then the ring in the game must have been transformed into a ring that existed in the real world through some special means. After Zhijiendi's subordinates obtained the ring, they immediately sent it to him. This was the most logical explanation. Gohan kept thinking about the possibilities of this ring. There were many ideas, but there were a few things that he was certain of. The heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor must have left behind a hidden force in this world, and this force was very likely to be monitoring him. For a moment, Gohan felt like there were countless pairs of eyes around him. The most suspicious ones were when Maiden and his sister Guyun, who were busy in the kitchen. For some reason, Gohan was always on guard against Guyun. Guyun might be his sister, but there was no guarantee that she wouldn't do something like spy on her brother. Guyun's state was too strange. She had the body of a young girl, but she had a mature personality. It was very suspicious. Aside from Guyun and Wenmei, Song Hama was also very suspicious. His childhood neighbor, his current neighbor, and Gohan suddenly stopped his suspicions. If he continued to suspect, the whole world might be watching him. Now was not the time to think about these things. The most important thing now was to send the courier to Chongyang Mountain. Zhijiendi had left something for him there. Maybe he could find the force that Zhijiendi had left behind in this world. No matter what their goal was, as long as they made a move, he would be able to find clues. As Gohan was thinking about this, when Maiden had already cooked a big bowl of noodles. There was even a large piece of pork on top. Because Gohan wanted to be fast, the noodles were very hot. When Maiden probably cooked them at the highest heat possible. Even though the noodles were extremely hot, Gohan still ate the bowl of noodles at an incredible speed. He wolfed it down and finished it all in less than 10 seconds. Gohan's esophagus could withstand the heat because he was using the Heavenly Sword's body. If it was an ordinary person, their stomach would probably have blisters. Chinpin, Etion, get ready. We're going on a long journey. After Gohan finished the noodles, he urged Chinpin and Etion to get ready. In the end, when Maiden, who was sweating profusely, jumped out and said that Qinpin and Gu Yun had left early in the morning under Yi Tian's lead. She couldn't stop the three of them at all. Hearing this, Gohan started to have a headache. However, Gohan's headache didn't last for long. A message interrupted his pain. "You have a message from your friend, Master, Cloud Sky's Sword Immortal, Lu Lei. Master is looking for me." Gohan was stunned. Why was Lu Lei looking for him at this time? Chapter 337. On the other end of the communication line, Lu Lei's voice was very urgent. It was almost as if he was ordering Gohan to go to his office immediately. In order to be in a hurry, Lu Lei gave Gohan special permission to use the quantum teleportation array in the Sword Garret to reach the Sword Garret directly. I don't know if everyone still remembers, but there is a quantum teleportation room in Gohan's house. This was a standard feature of every sword-bearer's house. Through the quantum teleportation room, they could be teleported to various key locations in Yuzhong City. At the first instance of a major attack, they could arrange their troops neatly. It was a pity that this entire system was only completed about 10 years ago. If the sword-bearers could reach the location of the fallout shelter where Gohan was in time, perhaps Gohan's parents would not have died. Normally, although these quantum teleportation arrays could be opened, they were basically unusable. This was because the teleportation arrays at the other end of the quantum teleportation array were public teleportation arrays controlled by the Sword Committee. Without the approval of the Sword Committee, the intelligence system in charge of managing the quantum teleportation arrays, namely Tomono Kakashi, would not open the teleportation function at the other end. However, at this time, Gohan had received special permission from Lu Lei. As one of the two highest-ranking people in Yuzhong City, Lu Lei's order was naturally negotiable. Using the teleportation array to travel was not an extravagant thing. It was just a few 100,000 RMB worth of energy. Therefore, when Gohan arrived at the teleportation room that he had used on the first day of moving, the teleportation array lit up very brilliantly. This meant that there was already a teleportation array on the other end that was connected to Gohan's teleportation array. "Hello, are you Sir Gohan? The teleportation is about to begin. Are you ready?" Standing on the teleportation array, Gohan could hear a pleasant female voice speaking to him. However, this voice did not come from Gohan's personal communication terminal. Instead, it was directly transmitted to his ears through the air, as if someone was speaking into his ear. Gohan knew about the information related to quantum teleportation arrays. This was a normal phenomenon of matter directly jumping through quantum channels. "I'm ready," Gohan replied. "All right, Lord Gohan. During the warp process, there will be nausea, headaches, confusion of consciousness, confusion of memory and other symptoms. Please do not worry, these are all normal symptoms. If your hand and position have shifted, please inform us immediately. This is an accident, and the probability of it happening is 0.2%, the female voice explained seriously. The so-called quantum warp, to put it simply, was to disassemble a person into a quantum state, teleport them to another location, and then reassemble the quantum state. The entire process was very fast, and the human senses were almost unable to detect the changes in the state of disassembly and reassembly. Normally, it would just make one feel a little nauseous. Of course, if one's luck was bad enough, it was not something that could not be explained by science. P.S. Regarding the explanation of quantum teleportation, the author is purely making things up. There is no scientific reasoning behind it at all. Fellow physics gurus, please take a break. There is no need to point out the author's fallacy. Oh right, regarding the problem of the melting point of diamonds and bones, it is the author's fault. I will also explain to everyone here that the melting point of diamonds and bones are about the same. There is a bug in the previous plot. Everyone, please do not put diamonds in a fire, it will catch fire. Thinking about the 0.2% chance of him turning into a monster, Gohan felt a little stifled. He wanted to leave the teleportation array, but unfortunately, the warp had already begun. Gohan could only look outside worriedly. Then, his head sank and he arrived in a completely new environment. As expected, after the teleportation, Gohan began to feel nauseous, as if he was suffering from severe motion sickness. However, Gohan had a strong character. Even if he felt dizzy, he still looked fine from the outside, which was praiseworthy. It was worth noting that beneath Gohan's feet was a teleportation array that was larger than the one in his room. It was said that this teleportation array could teleport about 10 sword-bearers at the same time. Beside the teleportation array stood a woman in a white coat. It seemed that she was the owner of the voice that had just spoken to Gohan. Very good, the 156th teleportation experiment of the Sword Garrett Quantum Teleportation Array is completed. The success rate is 98%. The teleportation array is performing well. The woman in the white coat recorded the experiment while muttering to herself. This made Gohan shudder. The success rate was 98%, which meant that there was still 2% that was not successful. There was still 2% of his body that had not been teleported over? Here, drink a cup of this. It will help you wake up. The woman in the white coat threw a bottle of drink to Gohan. Gohan took it and looked at it. Oh my god, it was actually Mount Lao white flower snake grass water. This kind of thing could indeed help the sword bearers recover their mental strength, but the actual taste, forget it, it was more important to leave this vicious state. Gohan directly opened the bottle and drank the entire bottle of Mount Lao white flower snake grass water without blinking. Then, he burped and instantly became sober. Not bad, you are a man. You are the fastest man I have ever seen to drink this thing. The man in the white coat praised Gohan. Alright, the experiment is over. I have to go. By the way, the 2% that you left behind should have become a pile of fat. Quantum teleportation is the easiest to lose fat. Congratulations, you have lost at least half a kilogram. TSK, the quantum teleportation array could actually teleport fats out. This was a good way to make a fortune. Think about it, as long as you teleport, all kinds of fats would disappear without a trace. This was very popular among female users. Alright, let's not talk any more nonsense. The man in the white coat disappeared from the teleportation room. Gohan also followed him out of the teleportation room. He was now inside the Sword Pavilion. Beside him was the Sword Pavilion's elevator. Gohan took the elevator directly to the top floor and gently knocked on the door of Liu Lei's office. Is it Gohan? Come in. Liu Lei's voice came from the room. Gohan quickly pushed the door and entered. He saw Liu Lei sitting behind the desk with a serious expression. Opposite him was a chair. Obviously, it was prepared for Gohan. Gohan did not stand on ceremony and directly sat opposite Liu Lei. He smiled and said, Master, why did you call me over in such a hurry? Good thing. Although Liu Lei said it was a good thing, his expression was very ugly. It was obvious that he was telling Gohan that this was a bad thing. Let's not talk about this first. Let me ask you. You were the one who commanded the battle between the Yaoguang Sword Sect and the Eternal Autumn Water Sword Sect, right? Liu Lei asked. Gohan nodded blankly. What does Liu Lei mean? Since he knows that I am Gohan, he should naturally know that I was the commander of that battle. What evidence do you have to prove this? Liu Lei asked very seriously. What's wrong with this Liu Lei? He's not usually this stupid. Although Gohan did not know what Liu Lei was planning, the other party was his own master. So, Gohan was destined to follow Liu Lei's wishes. At any time, the relationship between master and disciple was second only to the relationship between father and son. It could be said that it was more reliable than the relationship between husband and wife. Is this considered evidence? Gohan sent a receipt notification to Liu Lei. This was the notification of the reward for his King Arthur's Betrayal Dungeon Guide post. After more than a week, the popularity of this post had cooled down. Before the battle between the Yaoguang sword sect, the daily income had dropped to less than 200,000 renminbi. It was estimated that in another month, it would drop to less than 10,000 renminbi. However, after the battle with the Yaoguang sword sect, the situation was completely reversed. In just 48 hours of sleep, Guhan had received more than 60 million renminbi in rewards. You guys have to take note that these are rewards, not subscriptions. After all, one subscription is 5 renminbi, and after a subscription, you can't subscribe anymore. So, these rewards that were coming in were all rewards for Guhan. Every player was subdued by Guhan's exquisite commands and schemes, as well as the final battle where he single-handedly fought against 100 elites. In the end, the entire everlasting autumn water did not dare to take a step forward. They could only watch as Guhan ascended to the core of their formation like a subject. The entire everlasting autumn water sword sect was convinced by Guhan's slaughter. This included their sect leader, Yu Qinyu. This quiet sect leader posted an authenticated post with her real name on the forum, which was a rare sight. There was only one sentence. Defeated by the hands of Mr. Military Governor, this little girl is convinced. From now on, everlasting autumn water is Mr.'s man. This was the everlasting autumn water fulfilling the bet it had made with Guhan. This meant that the everlasting autumn water had publicly acknowledged the wager, and from now on, it would become a spear in Guhan's hands. In the end, because of this short announcement, the everlasting autumn water, which should have been dispirited due to their failed defense and falling out of the 10 great sword sects, miraculously managed to retain 90% of their original core strength. There was even a continuous stream of new people applying to join the everlasting autumn water. They only had one reason, and that was that they hoped to be able to work under the military governor. If they could participate in a world-shaking battle commanded by the military governor in their lifetime, they would have no regrets in their lives. The hundreds of people who had fought with Guhan to the end had all become popular. Every day they would be invited to all sorts of talk shows, and there were also many confessions from male gods and goddesses. Well, it was as if they had been admitted to Tsinghua University or Peking University. They were incredibly happy. From this, it could be seen how exciting that battle had been. All the spectators were so excited that they wanted to give their hard-earned New Year's money to the military governor, but they didn't have the military governor's friends, so in the end, they could only give their money to the dungeon walkthrough post that the military governor had posted. Yao Guang was also very tactful, and unilaterally cancelled the agreement to split the profits from the walkthrough post. In other words, the Yaoguang sword sect had voluntarily given up 50% of the income from the walkthrough post. After all, they had given their money to the military governor. If the Yaoguang sword sect wanted to take a share of this money, it would be a little too shameless. They had already obtained a spot in the 10 great sword sects, and that was enough. Yao Guang had taken another big step towards his goal. Just now, the message that Guhan had sent to Lu Lei was one of the reward notifications from the system. At first, Guhan thought that Lu Lei would just read it silently. He never expected that Lu Lei would actually project the message on the wall, and then read it word by word. Dear Swordsman Guhan, someone in the game has read the Charging Post King Arthur's Betrayal Dungeon walkthrough, posted by Military Governor 12580 in the forum. The person is very excited and has given you 50,000 renminbi. After deducting 20% of the personal income tax, 40,000 renminbi has been automatically transferred to your personal account. Moreover, Lu Lei was not satisfied after reading it once. When he was about to read it a second time, Guhan finally couldn't take it anymore. Master, who exactly are you acting for? Of course it's for an old B** starred. Lu Lei sneered. Then, a hole appeared in the void, and a spirited old man walked out. This person was none other than Yuzhang City's other immortal-level swordsman, Sword Sage Ju Wudao. Chapter 338. Little guy, how did you know that I was hiding in the room? Zhu Wudao, who had been exposed by Gohan, was very unhappy. He had hidden his body in the void. Only an immortal sword-rank sword-bearer of the same level as him, who could sense the void, would be able to detect the abnormality of the void. Apart from that, no sword-bearer below the immortal sword rank could detect him. Now that he had been seen through by a junior at the treasure sword rank, Zhu Wudao felt particularly embarrassed. Lord Baiju, you may not know this, but this junior's master is usually calm and dignified. He has a magnanimous demeanor and is a kind elder who is steady and reserved. This junior respects his master from the bottom of his heart. He would never do something as frivolous as what just happened. Therefore, this junior deduced that this was definitely a joke that my master was playing with his friend. Gohan first praised Lu Lei, then explained that it was not that Zhu Wudao's skills were not good enough, but that Lu Lei's behavior was too strange. In short, both of them were secretly flattering each other. Sure enough, after Gohan said this, Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao's expressions became much better. Lu Lei, in particular, pretended to knock on Gohan's head and scold him for being sly. Then, he threw a large glass bottle to Gohan, which was filled with fine powder. Gohan took a look and found that the large bottle was filled with high-quality sword mark dust, which was used to make deep sword marks. This is what I just earned. Come. Anyone who sees it has a share. I will give half to you. Lu Lei said with a smile, then winked at Zhu Wudao. Zhu Wudao's face twitched a little as he scolded. You old fart, you earned 2 bottles of sword mark dust from me because of your disciple. You should give all of it to your disciple. How dare you take half of it? TSK, this is where you are wrong. I was the one who made the bet with you. Naturally, I am qualified to take half of it. Lu Lei patted Gohan's shoulder. Good disciple, this old fart did not believe that you are the military governor and insisted on making a bet with me. What do you think? Should I take half of this sword mark dust? It turned out that the two of them had just made a bet with Gohan. Lu Lei said that his disciple was the famous military governor. Naturally, Zhu Wudao did not believe him and said that Lu Lei was trying to flatter himself. Therefore, the two of them each took out a large bottle of sword mark dust as a bet. They agreed that when Gohan arrived, Lu Lei would ask Gohan to take out the evidence that he was the military governor without directly pointing it out. That was how the scene just now came to be. However, Zhu Wudao's question seemed to be filled with malice. Regardless of whether Gohan answered yes or no, it was a slightly incongruous answer. As the old saying goes, a disciple has half a son. The disciple is the master's son, and the master is the disciple's father. Father and son are one, so why should they be separated? Everything should be decided by the father. Gohan's answer was very witty, especially when he compared himself and Lu Lei as father and son. This made Lu Lei's face turn into a chrysanthemum flower. Anyway, Lu Lei's strength and age were obvious. Not to mention being Gohan's father, he would not be at a disadvantage even if he were to be Gohan's grandfather. Good disciple, good son, I'll give you a big bag of sword scar crystals later. I guarantee that you'll be able to improve your ancient sword and the sword goddess to level 8. Ha. As expected, Lu Lei promised Gohan a lot of benefits when he was in a good mood. Well, old thing, let's get down to business. Zhu Wudao was sitting on the sofa. He was the chairman of the Sword Committee of Yuzhong City and the rightful number 1 person in Yuzhong City. He had a high status and lived like a prince. Over time, he naturally developed a majestic aura of a superior. Gohan felt that he was suppressed just by looking at him. In contrast, Lu Lei was more like a ruffian. Although there were times when his aura was monstrous, most of the time, he looked like an old urchin. It's time to get down to business. Lu Lei nodded. You've seen my disciple's commanding battle a few days ago. You've also seen his strength. Although that was in the game, in real life, it wouldn't be much weaker than in the game. My disciple is also an outstanding sword master. With such strength, do you have any objections to sending my disciple for this operation? Okay. Since your disciple is the military governor, I really have no objections. Zhu Wudao nodded. However, if your disciple is alone, I'm afraid he won't be able to handle it. Therefore, I will send someone to go with your disciple. The two of them can take care of each other along the way. You also want to send someone? Who are you going to send? From his tone, it seemed that Lu Lei did not object to Zhu Wudao sending someone. He was curious about who Zhu Wudao would send. Wait, what happened? Where did they want to send Guhan? Guhan was someone who was about to go to Changyang Mountain, and he only had less than 10 hours left. Master, you may not know, but I have an appointment with my friend. I will go out of the city today to complete the task of killing Yuan Ko. My friend is already waiting for me at my place. I'm afraid I can't. Before Gu Han could finish, Lu Lei interrupted him. All right, what you said is just a small matter. Later on, Master will send you to do something big. What task? As long as you complete this task, you will receive benefits that you will never be able to enjoy in your entire life. Hurry up and contact your friend. Tell him not to wait for you. Go and play by yourself. Tell him that I forced you to do this. Hurry up. Lu Lei's words were very domineering, so Guhan did not know how to deal with it. Of course, he did not have any friend to refuse, but this was what I Ching had repeatedly told him. Moreover, he had promised I Ching that he would definitely go to Changyang Mountain. Guhan pinched the ring on his finger and made a decision. Master, I'm afraid I can't listen to your orders anymore. I must complete my task first. Otherwise, I will never be at ease for the rest of my life. Guhan gritted his teeth. You stinking brat! Lu Lei was fuming with anger at Guhan's words. This stinking brat actually dared to refuse him. On the other side, Zhu Wudao laughed out loud. He was always the happiest when he saw his old rival and old buddy being humiliated. Hey, old man, your good disciple actually refused you. Very good. He has a backbone. I now completely believe that he is the military governor. What a good child. He has wisdom. I like it. Lu Lei glared at Zhu Wudao before turning his head to look at Guhan. What task are you going to complete, kid? You have such a firm attitude. Let me tell you, the task that I gave you this time is a good one. You will definitely regret it if you miss this opportunity. Yes, Master, you have good intentions. I didn't know how to appreciate your kindness. Please forgive me, Master. Gu Han's attitude was very humble, and he kept apologizing, which made it difficult for Lu Lei to vent his anger. However, the refusal in these words became even more resolute. Therefore, Lu Lei could only ask unwillingly, Where are you going? What task are you going to complete? I'm going to Changyang Mountain to look for the relics left behind by the sages. Guhan thought for less than a second and decided to tell the location honestly. This was because Lu Lei could easily sense Guhan's location with the aura he left on him. Moreover, he had the personal terminal's positioning system. It was impossible to hide his whereabouts. However, Guhan did not say that he was going to look for the things left behind by Zhetianjiandi. He only said that he was going to explore some relics. There were a lot of relics on Earth now, so this was a reason that would not be suspected. Guhan thought that Lu Lei would scold him a little when he heard him say this, but unexpectedly, Lu Lei's expression was very surprised. Not only Lu Lei, but even Zhu Wudao, who was next to him, was also surprised. Hey, good disciple, say it again. Where are you going? Lu Lei asked Guhan again. Changyang Mountain. Guhan answered honestly. I say, brat, are you in contact with the Liunian family? You actually received news from Changyang Mountain as well. This time, it was Guhan's turn to be shocked. Could it be that Lu Lei wanted him to go to Changyang Mountain as well? Also, what did this have to do with the Liunian family? Master, I only learned about the relics of the ancestors by chance, so I wanted to explore it. Apart from that, I don't know anything else. Guhan explained casually. All right, there's nothing to explain. Master knows that you and Miss Liu Ling are good friends. Very good friends of the opposite sex. I understand now. You must know that your good friend is in danger, so you rejected Master and rushed to save your friend. Lu Lei let out a long sigh. I didn't expect that Liu Ling would be trapped in Chongyang Mountain, and we don't even know if she's alive or dead. The Liu family has no choice but to come to us for help. Good disciple, if anything happens to that lass, don't take it too hard. What in the world was going on? What kind of danger is Liu Ling in? Guhan suddenly recalled that Liu Ling had gone to Chongyang Mountain. There were all sorts of messy messages, causing Guhan to be completely confused. He had no idea what was going on. Since he couldn't figure it out, he decided not to speak and listen to what Lu Lei had to say. Humph, I'll take your silence as a yes. Lu Lei chuckled. Who would have thought that Liu Ling would be chased by a great earth bear into shrouding Jiandi's great formation? They can only ask us for help now. The Liu family has gone for wool and come home shorn this time. Good disciple, when you go to save your little girlfriend later, don't forget to bring back the Emperor's sword for me. Yuzhang City will be taking that Emperor's sword. What's going on? Why is Chongyang Mountain related to the Emperor's sword? Guhan screamed in his mind. Chapter 339. After that, Guhan tried to find out more or less what had happened. At the very least, it was the version that the Liu family had spread. A few weeks ago, Hao Tianjiendi had suddenly sensed that there were signs of an Emperor's sword lady appearing in the direction of Gansu. Moreover, this Emperor's sword lady should have never appeared in the human world before. It was a brand new sword lady appearing for the first time. However, this was an incredible matter. The humans had not had a new Emperor's sword lady appearing for more than 500 years. Coincidentally, the humans were about to enter the difficult sword era. Every new Emperor's sword lady had the possibility of creating an Emperor sword wielder. As such, Hao Tianjiendi had ordered his subordinates to go to Gansu to investigate. In the end, he had confirmed that the Emperor's sword should be near Chongyang Mountain. Hao Tianjiendi was Jiendi, and he was a person who was about to die. He did not covet the Emperor's sword at all. His only thought was to keep this new Emperor's sword in the Yanjing base city. As mentioned before, every base city had a heart to collect all the sword ladies. As such, Hao Tianjiendi had rushed to tell this news to the two most powerful families in Yanjing, the Hongru family and the Liu family. This was a huge matter. After some discussion, the leaders of the two families decided to send their respective successors, Su Tianyuan and Liu Ling, to search for the Emperor's sword. This way they could kill 3 birds with 1 stone. Firstly, it could train the abilities of the two successors, and at the same time, improve their relationship. Secondly, when the Emperor's sword lady appeared, it would emit a bright sword light. The wielder who was illuminated by the sword light could greatly improve their affinity with the sword essence, allowing them to accumulate sword essence faster. At the same time, it would also increase their affinity with the sword lady. Thirdly, bringing back an Emperor's sword mistress was a great achievement. At the very least, with this achievement, the two families would be able to gain a wave of favorability points among the humans, and they would also be able to secure their positions as successors. Fourthly, according to the first batch of Hao Tianjiandi's subordinates, not only was the place deserted, but there were also very few traces of Yuan Ko. There were no traces of nether level or above Yuan Ko within a few hundred miles. In other words, that place was not of fatal danger to Liu Ling and Su Tianyuan. As such, the leaders of the two families slapped their heads. And Su Tianyuan went to Chongyang Mountain with Liu Ling. In the beginning, everything went smoothly. The two of them used advanced scientific equipment to successfully find the suspected location of the Emperor's sword. In the end, when they were excavating the mountain, a meteor-level earth bear came out. This was a U-level Yuan Ko, which was second only to Yuan Ko. Fleeting Time Lin and Su Tianyuan led a powerful party, and both of them were knowledgeable in their own right. Even so, the earthen bear was able to kill many of the swordbearers. Most of the swordbearers died at the hands of the earthen bear. Su Tianyuan had no choice but to activate a precious void talisman and hide his body in the void. Only then did he survive. Liuyan Ling could also use void talismans. She had 4 or 5 of these talismans that were worth hundreds of millions each. However, for some reason, Liuyan Ling didn't use them. She was chased by the earth bear. In the end, she found the formation that sky-covering Jiandi had set up. Then, Liuyan Ling hid in the formation and didn't send any messages. Su Tianyuan recounted what happened to Liuyan Ling. Although he hid in the void, he could still move and watch the battle outside. Su Tianyuan watched the entire process of Liuyan Ling's escape from the void. Then, he quickly left Changyang Mountain and found a way to contact Yanjing City to report the news. The Liuyan family panicked. They couldn't let their only heir die here. For 1,000 years, the Liuyan family had only one heir. Liuyan Ling didn't have any siblings. She didn't even have a child. If Liuyan Ling died, the Liuyan family might not have any more descendant. The Liuyan family had no choice but to inform the other base cities and ask them to send their best sword-bearers into the formation to save Liuyan Ling. Even if they couldn't save her alive, they had to save her body. As for why they wanted the best sword-bearers and not the advanced sword-bearers of their families, it was because Su Tianyuan found an LED display near the formation. Su Tianyuan tried to connect the LED with electricity. Then, he saw a message left by Sky covering Jiandi. It was a simple message. This is a trial ground for the younger generation. All sword-bearers above sword-bearers will have their sword marks broken if they enter. What it meant was that this was a trial ground for the younger generation. If any sword-bearers above sword-bearers entered, their sword marks would definitely be broken. It didn't matter whether they believed it or not. In any case, no sword-bearers above sword-bearers dared to enter. Dying at the hands of Yuan Ko was a worthy death, but dying at the hands of Sky covering Jiandi was nothing. Since Sky covering Jiandi had clearly said that this was a trial ground for the younger generation, those sword-bearers above sword-bearers would be too embarrassed to barge in. As a result, the Lu Nian clan went with the flow and announced this news to all the headquarter cities, telling them to quickly send their best sword-bearers to the trial and save their heirs at the same time. The Lu Nian clan used this reason to justify asking them to send their best sword-bearers. If even the heirs of the Lu Nian clan could not pass the trial, ordinary sword-bearers would definitely be trapped. So, they had to send their best sword-bearers in. Although Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao were very dissatisfied with the Lu Nian clan's arrogant attitude, they had to admit that the heirs of each generation of the Lu Nian clan were the cream of the crop. If even she could not come out, perhaps the trial ground was really not suitable for ordinary sword-bearers. As a result, Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao began to discuss which sword-bearers Yuzhang City should send to Changyang Mountain. Naturally, Lu Lei strongly recommended Gohan. He said that Gohan's strength was definitely second in Yuzhang City, and he was not far from first. Zhu Wudao naturally did not believe this. How could a little guy who had only been a sword-bearer for a few days have such strength? Helpless, Lu Lei could only say that Gohan was the military governor. He even played the edited video of Gohan commanding Yaoguang to fight Heng Tian Qiushui to Zhu Wudao. It could not be helped. Ever since Zhu Wudao became a sword-bearer, he had not logged into the game even once. In his words, no matter how much sword essence he accumulated in the game, it was not as useful as fighting in real life. Unfortunately, his words, which sounded like they had the potential to become famous, were forcefully slapped in the face by Gu Jinyang. Gu Jinyang was the best example of a rising star in the game. He was known as the strongest sword-bearer in the later Jiangshan Jiandi era. Zhu Wudao did not even have the strength to refute the slap. Helpless against Gu Jinyang, Zhu Wudao could only vent his anger on the game. He swore that he would never step into the game again. Naturally, he did not know about the legend of the military governor, nor had he seen any of the military governor's battles. Lu Lei could only show Zhu Wudao the edited video afterwards. Although he still disdained the game, after watching the video, Zhu Wudao admitted that the military governor could be a top sword-bearer, be it in the game or in real life. However, Zhu Wudao doubted the identity of the military governor. It was impossible for Lu Lei's apprentice to be the military governor, which was why he had tested him at the beginning. Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao agreed to Guhan's name, and it appeared on the list of people going to Changyang Mountain. However, there were two other names that appeared together with Guhan's name. When Guhan roughly figured out the ins and outs of the matter, someone knocked on the door of Lu Lei's office again. "Come in." Lu Lei responded, and a slender figure walked in. "Greetings, Master." "Greetings, Senior Yun Xiao." "Is this my teammate? Why does the voice sound so familiar?" Guhan turned around when he heard the voice. The slender figure turned out to be Song Yifei. Song Yifei was shocked when she saw Guhan turn around. She did not expect Guhan to be here. She thought that her master had called her over alone. "Come, Yifei." "Greetings, Senior Lu Lei." Zhu Wudao gestured for Song Yifei to bow to Lu Lei. It turned out that the apprentice Zhu Wudao was talking about was Song Yifei. What a coincidence! Lu Lei squinted for a while and smiled. "I remember now. Aren't you the sword wielder who synchronized the wisdom sword? Oh, you seem to be good friends with my apprentice too." "Yes, Senior. If it weren't for Senior Guhan's sword mistress, Etienne, I wouldn't have found Lady Wisdom's sword and become an ancient sword wielder. It was all thanks to Senior Guhan's help, Yifei," Song Yifei said sincerely. Indeed, without Guhan, Song Yifei would still be treating patients in the hospital. "Thank you, Senior Guhan." Then, Song Yifei also bowed to Guhan, which made Lu Lei burst into laughter and Zhu Wudao feel annoyed. They had both taken in two apprentices. Somehow, his apprentice owed Lu Lei's apprentice such a big favor. She might even be suppressed by Guhan for the rest of her life. "Hey, old man, your apprentice is only an ancient sword wielder. We're going to use a treasured sword wielder this time. Your apprentice isn't qualified," Lu Lei mocked. Ignorant," Zhu Wudao said proudly. Just yesterday, Song Yifei received the recognition of the Mingyuan sword and became a treasured sword wielder. My apprentice's cultivation speed is faster than yours by a month. What? It's the Mingyuan sword. Lu Lei and Guhan's expressions froze at the same time. Wasn't the Mingyuan sword the sword mistress of the Mingyuan Jiandi, who abandoned her identity as a sword wielder to become Yuan Ko? It was obvious that the Mingyuan Jiandi's title came from the Mingyuan sword. Chapter 340. The Ming Iris Sword Emperor was a legendary sword wielder. She was one of the few female sword wielders among the sword emperors. Not long ago, she was so dazzling among the humans. She had 12,000 innate sword essences and was ranked third in history, second only to the sword ancestor and the green snake sword immortal. She became an ancient sword wielder on the day she turned 18. 3 days later, she synchronized with a treasure sword wielder. 1 week later, she obtained a famous sword. At 19, she obtained a spirit sword, and at 28, she obtained a celestial sword. Before she reached 40, she became the highest human Jiandi. She was also ranked third in human history when she became an emperor sword wielder. She was second only to Kanzu's fleeting years and Gu Jin Jiandi. Mingyuan Jiandi's life was extremely smooth. On her way to becoming a Jiandi, she didn't encounter any obstacles. This directly led to Mingyuan Jiandi's arrogant personality. She arrogantly declared to humans that she would kill all the flood and desolate level Yuan Ko in one go. She wanted to completely drive Yuan Ko out of the earth. Speaking of which, this declaration was exactly the same as Gu Han's. They both said that they wanted to kill every single Yuan Ing. In the end, this arrogant Jiendi received a wake-up call when she turned 40. Her first target was the Western Temple of the Yuan Ko faction. At first, she smoothly destroyed many of the Western Temple's strongholds and even killed 2 universe-level Yuan Ko. However, when she was destroying the next stronghold, she was ambushed by the Western Temple. The Western Temple's desolate-level Yuan Ko Yahweh brought 8 universe-level Yuan Ko archangels and desolate-level giant beasts from the Western Demon Beast camp to surround Mingyuan Jiendi. No one knew what the outcome of that battle was. Aside from the Ming Iris Sword Empress, all the other sword-bearers who followed her had died in that battle. The Ming Iris Sword Empress was lucky enough to escape and hid in her territory. She claimed that she was recuperating from her injuries. In the end, no one heard of the Ming Iris Sword Empress appearing in the world for 30 years. Just when the human world was about to forget about Mingyuan Jiendi, Mingyuan suddenly rushed out of her place of seclusion and used the broadcasting device of the Sword Committee to announce to the world that she didn't want to be a human anymore. From now on, she was Yuan Ko. Then, she left Yuzhong City and entered the endless wilderness to become a real Yuan Ko. The world never really understood why Mingyuan Jiendi wanted to become a Yuan Ko. It was just that the other Jiendi said that Mingyuan was afraid of death, so she chose to become a Yuan Ko to escape death. As for the reason, perhaps only Mingyuan Jiendi herself knew. By the way, Mingyuan Jiendi was still alive and living a very good life. After Mingyuan Jiendi announced that she had betrayed the human race, her family was shocked to find that other than Mingyuan Jiendi's Emperor Sword Ladies, the rest of the Sword Ladies, from ancient sword rank to fairy sword rank, were all left. Because of this, humans thought that Mingyuan Jiendi still had some conscience and did not take revenge on Mingyuan Jiendi's descendant. They only strictly restricted the living conditions of Mingyuan Jiendi's descendants so that they could only be ordinary people for the rest of their lives. The sword ladies left behind by Mingyuan Jiendi were naturally kept in the sword pavilion. The ancient sword rank, famed sword rank, spiritual sword rank, and fairy sword rank were synchronized with the other sword bearers. Only the treasure sword rank Mingyuan Jiendi, the treasure sword rank sword lady, which was the source of Mingyuan Jiendi's emperor title, did not acknowledge any other sword bearers. Just when everyone thought that the Mingyuan sword would not be able to find another sword bearer, Song Yifei suddenly synchronized with it. This was the first master of the Mingyuan sword after Mingyuan Jiendi. When Lu Lei and Gohan heard this news, their imaginations began to run wild. Lu Lei was looking at the bigger picture. He was wondering if the Netheriris Sword Emperor was behind the Netheriris Sword's sudden acknowledgement of him. On the other hand, Gohan was more realistic. Song Yifei was very useful now. I didn't expect Yifei to synchronize with the Mingyuan sword. A few days ago, Yifei came to the sword pavilion to synchronize with the treasure sword lady, and he had a strong connection with the Mingyuan sword. I didn't expect him to succeed after trying it out, Zhu Wudao said with a smile. I think Yifei is a talent. Her innate sword essence is also very high. I only accepted her as my disciple. Gohan, since you and Yifei have been friends for a long time, you should support and help each other. Yuzhong City might have to rely on you guys to survive the difficult sword era. Yifei, please take care of me, senior brother Gohan. Song Yifei said to Gohan politely. Her expression was dignified, but there was a sense of distance. She behaved like a virtuous lady. She was almost like a different person from the Song Yifei that Gohan knew. Where's Lu Ren? He's already 5 minutes late. Why isn't he here yet? Old thing, did you tell him to come to my office? At this time, it had been more than half an hour since Gohan arrived at Lu Lei's office, and Song Yifei had also arrived 10 minutes ago. It seemed that there was still one person who hadn't arrived yet. He dared to be late in front of the Sword Immortal. This sword-wielder named Lu Ren seemed to be quite a character. "Stop nagging. I'm here." The door was pushed open, and a young man dressed like a punk from thousands of years ago walked in. His hair was like the halo of a sun in a child's pen, and there were black smoke rings around his eyes. His face was pale, and his lips were purposely painted green, which made people want to vomit. Could this person be the Lu Ren that Lu Lei had mentioned? He didn't match his name at all. "Brat, didn't I tell you to put your hair back? Don't you understand what I said?" Seeing Lu Ren's behavior, Zhu Wudao was so angry that his face turned pale. There was a strong feeling of resentment towards Lu Ren for failing to meet his expectations. "All right, old man Zhu, Lu Ren's dressing is also his personality. Didn't I hear that the main idea of quality education before the Great Calamity was not to stifle children's individuality? Lu Ren is just dressed a little weirdly, but the rest of him is still very good." Lu Lei tried to persuade him. However, no matter how one listened, it sounded like a strong sense of mockery. "Why did you ask me to come here? If there's nothing else, I'm going back to sleep," Lu Ren said coldly, without a trace of emotion on his face. "Humph." Zhu Wudao's humph sounded cold, but in fact it was full of helplessness. "All right, Lu Ren. Let me explain to you." Lu Lei took the initiative to explain the matter of Chongyang Mountain again. "Lu Ren, Gohan, Ifei, this is an excellent opportunity for you to improve in the future. You must grasp this opportunity well. The primary objective of this mission is to rescue Miss Lionian Ling. The secondary objective is to find a new Emperor's sword and then bathe in the sword radiance when the Emperor's sword is born. Lastly, if possible, snatch the Emperor's sword from the hands of Yanjing City and bring it back to Yuzhong City. If you can bring the Emperor's sword back, I, Lu Lei, will give you 100,000. No. 300,000 hero coins. This is the amount of hero coins that a famed sword master can only earn after 10 years of hard work. As long as you bring the Emperor's sword back, all these coins will be yours." Sigh, this Lu Lei said that the last mission was to bring back the Emperor's sword and the first was to rescue Liunian Ling. However, the first two missions didn't even mention any rewards. Only the last mission directly drew a huge pie with 300,000 hero coins. Even a ghost could tell what Lu Lei was really thinking. Yes. Yes. Gohan and Song Yifei nodded one after another. In the face of an immortal sword master's mission, they couldn't and didn't want to reject it. "I'm not going." However, Lu Ren was different. He answered dryly, turned around, and was about to leave. "Stop right there!" Zhu Wudao roared, and the entire office shook. It also successfully made Lu Ren stop in his track. "Is there anything else?" Lu Ren said coldly. "Ku-rak-in, let me tell you. This is a mission from the Yuzhong City Sword Committee. If you dare to reject it, I will directly cut off your sword mark. Everything you have is given by me, and I can also take it back for you." This guy's full name was actually Ku-rak-in. Combined with the way he spoke to Zhu Wudao and Zhu Wudao's helplessness toward him, it was obvious that this Ku-rak-in should be Zhu Wudao's son. No, Zhu Wudao was almost 75 years old. How could he have such a young son? Ku-rak-in should be his grandson. Just now, Zhu Wudao said those words while gritting his teeth. Indeed, Yuzhong City had a law that if one didn't listen to the command of the higher-ups of Yuzhong City and acted recklessly, the Sword Committee had the right to directly cut off the sword marks of these sword bearers. However, this law was aimed at some very bad behavior or violations of military orders during times of war. It was a bit too much to say that one would be cut off just because they didn't want to accept a mission. If they were brought to the court of the Discipline Commission for discipline inspection, they wouldn't be punished so severely. Refusing to accept a mission that didn't affect the survival of Yuzhong City or directly cause the death of other sword-bearers would be a heavy punishment if they were locked up for a day or two. Of course, as the chairman of the Sword Committee, It was naturally a small matter for Zhu Wudao to punish a treasure sword level sword bearer. No one would say anything. Moreover, this treasure sword level sword bearer was Zhu Wudao's own grandson. It was natural for a grandfather to beat his grandson. Okay, I'll go. Ku Rakin didn't insist. After saying that, he left Lu Lei's office. Ku Rakin's unreasonable attitude completely darkened a certain person's face. This arrogant comrade didn't think that if he didn't have a sword immortal grandfather, Lu Lei would definitely kick him out if he treated Lu Lei with such an attitude. Chapter 341. Guhan and Song Yifei agreed to meet up with Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao in the parking lot of the core zone in 3 hours. They left Lu Lei's office together. As soon as they left the room, Song Yifei's tensed body relaxed, and she returned to how Guhan was familiar with her. Meow, I'm so tired. I had to face 2 sword immortals at the same time. My legs are shaking, Song Yifei said as she patted her chest. Actually, Song Yifei's chest wasn't small. He roughly estimated that it was at least 4 cup sizes bigger than Qingpin's. Oh, I forgot to mention that Qingpin's cup size might be in the negative. Guhan subconsciously looked at Song Yifei's legs. Unfortunately, Song Yifei's legs were tightly covered by a green dress, so Guhan couldn't see if Song Yifei's legs were shaking or not. Guhan, I didn't expect you to be Sword Immortal Cloudsky's disciple. Why didn't you tell me before? Song Yifei glared at Guhan angrily. You didn't tell me that you're Sword Immortal Baiju's disciple either, did you? Guhan retorted as he rolled his eyes at Song Yifei. You heard from my master that I only became his disciple the day before yesterday. Where have you been for the past 2 days? I haven't seen you at all. Song Yifei argued. Guhan couldn't be bothered to answer her. They weren't so close to each other that she needed to call him every day to report his whereabouts. Wasn't it normal for him to not see her for 2 days? By the way, why did you touch the Netherworld Iris sword? You're quite bold, to actually be willing to waste an opportunity of synchronization. Guhan was a little surprised. Due to the fact that no one had ever successfully synchronized the demonic iris sword for so many years, and the fact that the demonic iris sword wasn't ranked high among the treasured swords, only around the 100th rank, it was automatically ignored by the majority of sword wielders. No one would waste a precious opportunity on a sword maiden that was destined to fail. Only sword wielders who had been stuck at the treasured sword rank for most of their lives and had tested all of the sword maidens at least once would go for the demonic iris sword. There were very few sword wielders like Song Yifei who went for the demonic iris sword on their first try. Didn't I tell you? That's because I have a strong affinity with the infernal iris sword, replied Song Yifei dryly. You don't have any confidence in your answer. Guhan turned his head and stared into Song Yifei's eyes. As a friend, I have to tell you that if it's really because of the affinity between you and the demonic iris sword, then it's very likely that you're in the middle of a huge scheme. It's too strange for you to be able to synchronize with the demonic iris sword. I highly suspect that there's something fishy going on here. Before the demonic iris sword met the demonic iris sword, it was a sword maiden that was easy to synchronize with. It had already had 5 or 6 masters. However, after the demonic iris sword was in Jiandi's hands, it hasn't shown any signs of movement for several hundred years. There's something fishy going on here. I strongly suspect that the demonic iris sword and Jiandi are still maintaining a certain level of connection. It's very likely that the affinity between you and the demonic iris sword is being manipulated by the demonic iris sword from behind the scenes. It's very likely that he's trying to use the demonic iris sword and you to carry out some sort of scheme. It's best that you keep your guard up around the demonic iris sword, or else you'll be in big trouble. What gives you the right to say that about my sword maiden? Song Yifei's eyes widened in anger. Didn't our teachers teach us that sword maidens are humans' best friends? Shouldn't we have absolute trust and respect for them? Didn't we humans and sword maidens help each other to get to where we are today? Why are you telling me to keep my guard up around my sword maiden? What are you thinking? I can trust other sword maidens, but your demonic iris sword is different. The relationship between it and the demonic iris sword is written clearly in primary school textbook. Song Yifei, I know what I said is a little harsh, but I'm telling the truth, said Gohan. Humph, it's none of your business. Who do you think you are? Song Yifei spat. This isn't just about you. If the Nether Iris Sword is really a foreshadowing left behind by the Nether Iris Sword Emperor in the human world, you won't be the only one affected once the Nether Iris Sword is activated. Song Yifei, this might affect the safety of the entire human world, said Gulen coldly. You're exaggerating. Song Yifei mumbled. Gohan knew that he had failed to persuade her. Fine, he would just let her be. If it was really Jiandi's plan, it wasn't something he could resolve with just a few words. He could only hope that it was just his delusion. After the unpleasant conversation, Gohan and Song Yifei walked in silence for a while. Gohan walked in front without saying a word, while Song Yifei regretted her actions. She knew that what Gohan said was reasonable. Even her master, Zhu Wudao, had clearly warned her to be careful of the demonic iris sword. All she needed to do was say something along the lines of Gohan and mutter a few words. There was no need for her to start a fight with Gohan for no reason. How did you know that the demonic iris sword didn't sense my sword affinity on its own? I was the one who touched it on my own accord. Song Yifei thought to herself. Since your sword maiden hasn't been synchronized for over 300 years, I'll do the same. I don't want the gap between us to widen. Not to mention what these two people were thinking, Gohan and Song Yifei walked all the way. When they came to a fork in the road, they found that Song Yifei was still following them. Gohan couldn't help but feel strange, so she turned around and asked, "Why are you still following me? Aren't you going home?" "Who's following you?" Song Yifei blushed. "My house is in this direction too. I know you live in Sanqing Mountain District. My house is there too. I just moved in." "Oh." Gohan nodded. Indeed, the new sword bearers were arranged to live in Sanqing Mountain District. It was possible that Song Yifei was heading in the same direction as him. "You can go back first. I still have something to do." Gohan waved his hand and walked in another direction. "Hey, are you going to look for your sword maiden?" Song Yifei asked as she chased after Gohan. "How did you know?" Gohan was startled. He had indeed lost the sword lady who was looking for him. Qing Popper and Gu Yun had been taken by Yi Tian to who knows where to play. In less than 3 hours, they were going to gather and set off. Gohan had to bring these 3 unlucky kids back. Fortunately, with the sword mark, Gohan could estimate where Qing Pin and Yi Tian were. He didn't have to worry about not being able to find them. "My sword maiden is with your sword maiden," Song Yifei said with a red face. "I met Lady Yitian on the way here." Mingyuan seemed to know Lady Yitian, so they went to play together. What was this? Was it fate? The 2 sword bearers were together. They suddenly realized that their sword maidens were together in advance. As a result, Gohan and Song Yifei set off to look for their sword maidens. Following the sword mark's reaction, Gohan and Song Yifei arrived at the central business district of the core area. There were many people here, and it was almost crowded. Because every inch of land in the core area was worth its weight in gold, the central business district was only a few square kilometers in size. Naturally, it was very crowded. This wasn't the era before the Great Calamity where commerce was king. The more expensive a territory was, the more central business districts there were. This was an era where people lived. Everyone wanted to build residential buildings in the core area. Being able to squeeze out a small part of the central business district was already a very extravagant thing. If they weren't careful, Gohan and Song Yifei were squeezed together by the crowd. Their bodies were pressed closely together. Gohan could clearly feel 2 soft steamed buns on his chest. Song Yifei's breath blew on Gohan's neck, giving Gohan goosebumps. Because these were all ordinary people, even if Gohan and Song Yifei were both sword bearers, they couldn't use brute force to do anything to these ordinary people. If this got out, it would be big news. The ordinary people in the core area weren't ordinary people either. They all had sword bearers behind them. If they didn't handle it well, they might offend a lot of people. Most importantly, the Commission for Discipline Inspection had a strict rule that in the core area, unless they met Yuan Ko, and unless their lives were in danger, sword bearers were not allowed to use their power. Once they used it, they would be sued by the Commission for Discipline Inspection. Therefore, the two of them were squeezed to the side of the road by the surging crowd for a while before separating. Song Yifei's face was flushed. She didn't care that her two steamed buns were pressed against Gohan's chest. What she cared about was that her lower body was being pressed against by something hot. It was an amazingly hard stick that was emitting heat. It was directly pressed against the area between Song Yifei's legs. Song Yifei wasn't an idiot who didn't know anything. Of course, she knew what that stick was. Therefore, Song Yifei felt her entire body was wet. "Humph, I thought you were something special. In the end, you still fell for my beauty," Song Yifei thought proudly. It was obvious that she had been taken advantage of by Gohan, but she wasn't angry at all. Instead, she had a smug look on her face. This matter really needed to be praised. Gohan's expression didn't look right either. He didn't think that the problem with the Green Lotus Three Swords would be this serious. It was just a physical contact, and he made a fool out of himself. Song Yifei was probably furious. Of course, Gohan didn't know that Song Yifei wasn't angry at all right now. Instead, she had a smug look on her face. Chapter 342. In this world, there was a kind of love called meeting love at a corner. Of course, there was also a kind of love called Qingpin meeting Qingpin at a corner. Gohan and Song Yifei awkwardly turned a corner and saw a scene that made Gohan burn with jealousy. A bald donkey was hugging Qingpin and kissing Qingpin's little face. What was worse was that this guy was kissing and chanting Amitba. Every time he kissed, he would say Amitba. Gohan was about to explode. Gohan had never kissed Qingpin so many times in his life. What the F***ck Song Yifei, who was watching from the side, was very happy. After all, this bald donkey was her sword lady. Song Yifei laughed as she watched. "Gohan, it seems that our Hanya really likes your Qingpin. I've never seen Hanya like this. She's been staying in the temple these few days. I thought she was really a bodhisattva. Your Hanya should go kiss your Mingyuan. Who asked her to kiss my Qingpin?" Gohan was speechless. He walked forward and was about to carry Qingpin back. "Stupid nun, the first thing you do when you get back is to give Qingpin a good bath," Gohan thought to himself. The jealous Gohan casually reached out a hand and was about to take Qingpin back. However, Hanya's reaction was very quick. She moved to the side and dodged Gohan's outstretched hand, giving Gohan a big miss. "You have some ability." Gohan's eyebrows twitched. Just now, he had attacked out of jealousy. Although he did not use his full strength, he had used 50% of his strength. 50% of his strength was enough to deal with an ordinary sword maiden, but this Bo-Ri had easily dodged it. Not to mention anything else, this movement technique was at the peak even among sword maidens. "Give me back Qingpin." Gohan let out a cold snort and attacked 3 more times. Each time, he attacked Hanya's most crucial spot. Let alone dodging, normal people wouldn't even be able to see it clearly. However, Hanya dodged them one by one, causing Gohan's attacks to miss. However, Hanya couldn't dodge as easily as she did at the beginning. She slightly gasped for breath. It seemed like she had spent a lot of energy just now. "Are the two of you fighting?" Song Yifei looked at Gohan and Bo-Ri in confusion. He couldn't understand why this man and woman were fighting. Did they have a grudge against each other? From Song Yifei's point of view, Hanya hugging and kissing Qingpin was just an expression of her fondness for Qingpin. It wasn't a big deal. It was like a friend coming home and seeing that your naughty child was cute, so they kissed him a few times. It couldn't be more normal. Song Yifei didn't expect that Gohan would suddenly become jealous and start fighting with Hanya. Qingpin, come back. Hearing Song Yifei's words, Gohan calmed down. At this time, his fight with Hanya had already attracted a lot of onlookers. If they continued fighting, they would be treated like monkeys. Thus, Gohan simply used his will to make Qingpin return to his sword form. It turned into a stream of light and returned to his hand. Then, he released Qingpin back to his cute form and held him in his arms. Gohan, why are you here? Because Gohan was going to meet Lu Lei. He didn't bring Qingpin's nursery bag. Qingpin could only lean in Gohan's arms and say with a pout, I'm here to look for you, Gu Yun and Etian. We have a mission. We're about to leave the city to carry out the mission. Carry out the mission? Just like the time at Plum Ridge? Hearing that they were going to carry out the mission, Qingpin immediately thought of something good. Then, his saliva flowed down the corner of his mouth. Hey Gohan, can we still eat that frog meat? No. This trip to Changyang Mountain was Yuan Ko's territory. It wouldn't be like Plum Ridge, where there was someone running a restaurant. It was already a great blessing to not starve Qingpin. Hearing that they wouldn't be able to eat delicious frog meat this time, Qingpin immediately lost interest and became listless. However, she immediately thought of something and twisted a few times in Gohan's arms. Gohan, hurry up and let me go. I still haven't been kissed yet. Let me go first. When Gohan heard that Qingpin actually took the initiative to give Hanya a kiss, he was infuriated. He snorted and asked, What's going on? Why do you want Hanya to kiss you? Qingpin wants a doll. Qingpin pouted and said, Hanya said that as long as Qingpin kisses her 100 times, she will give Qingpin 100 coins so that Qingpin can play with dolls. 100 coins? Play with dolls? Hearing this, Gohan immediately raised his head and looked around. Sure enough, on Gohan's left, there was a shop with the words, Heroes of Heaven and Earth Animation and Entertainment City, which was filled with all kinds of electronic entertainment equipment. Although virtual reality games were already perfect in the modern era, it seemed that the traditional dolls from before the apocalypse could be replaced. However, in reality, the satisfaction in reality was something that the game could never satisfy the players. Therefore, such an electronic entertainment city was still very popular after 1,000 years. Hearing that 100 coins and dolls could be played with, Gohan could roughly guess what had happened. Looking at the signboard of the electronic entertainment city, everything was clear. It seemed like Qingpin had taken a fancy to one of the dolls in the claw machine, but she didn't have any coins. Therefore, she could only use her cute face to exchange for the game coins in Hanya's hand. Qingpin, if you want to buy something in the future, just tell me. Don't bother others. Gohan hugged Qingpin in his arms. Let's go, I'll get you the doll you want. Saying this, Gohan carried Qingpin and strode into the Heaven and Earth Heroes Animation and Entertainment City. Hey! Don't we have to gather in 2 hours? Seeing Gohan run in, Song Yifei had no choice but to follow Gohan into the city. Amitabha, Buddha once said that all laws punish the heavens. Emptiness is a lullicon, lust is a lullicon. Let go of the lullicon and become a Buddha. Amitabha. This sword maiden Hanya shouted a Buddhist chant that only she could understand and also entered the entertainment city. As soon as they entered the Heaven and Earth Heroes Animation and Entertainment City, Gohan saw Etian. She was riding a hoverbike and speeding on the virtual road. However, Etian's gaming device seemed to be for 2 people. Beside Etian, there was a girl in black who was also racing. It seemed like the 2 of them were competing. Forget it, Gohan decided to help Qingpin get her doll first. Hearing that Gohan was going to help her with the doll, Qingpin was very excited. She waved her little hands and guided Gohan to a claw machine. Gohan, look, doesn't this doll look like you? The dolls in this claw machine were all cute anthropomorphic dolls. Gohan took a look at the claw machine's description. It turned out that the dolls in this claw machine were all cute Gyendi dolls made in the past Gyendi's appearance. Yes, it must be said that these dolls were all genuine dolls that had been authorized by the Sword Committee. They were definitely not those shoddily made pirated dolls. Buying dolls and holding dolls meant that one had to hold the genuine dolls. Ahem, back to the main topic. Seeing these dolls, Qingpin suddenly became excited. She pointed at a blue doll wearing casual clothes and shouted happily, Gohan, Qingpin wants that doll, Qingpin wants that doll. Is this doll really that good looking? Is there a need to care so much about it? Gohan thought sourly. However, when he took a closer look at the doll, he felt that it was a little familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Gohan, look, doesn't this doll look like you? Qingpin pinched Gohan's face, as if she wanted to use her hand to confirm Gohan's appearance. Hearing Qingpin's words, Gohan immediately understood why this doll looked so familiar. This doll indeed looked like him. Gohan, Qingpin will hug this doll to sleep in the future. That way, Qingpin will have two Gohan to sleep with. Qingpin's cute and soft words completely melted Gohan's heart. It turned out that Qingpin wanted this doll because she wanted another Gohan to sleep with her. Well, just because of this sentence, Gohan had to take this doll out. Gohan carefully observed this claw machine. Most of the doll that looked like Gohan was buried by the other dolls, and only its head was exposed. In other words, if Gohan wanted to grab this doll, he could only grab the doll's head. Gohan looked at the claw machine's claws. Although the claws weren't big, it was enough to clamp the doll's head. Therefore, Gohan nodded confidently. With Gohan's eyesight and subtle control of strength, it was a piece of cake for him to grab this doll. Go, exchange some coins for me. At this time, Song Yifei had just caught up. Gohan threw 100 renminbi into Song Yifei's personal terminal without looking back and left this sentence. Therefore, Song Yifei eagerly went to the automatic coin machine and exchanged 100 coins for Gohan. As a result, when she handed the coins to Gohan, she suddenly realized what the hell was going on. When did she become Gohan's henchman? Although Song Yifei was cursing in her heart at this time, Gohan had already started to clamp the doll. Song Yifei, who also had no resistance to clamping dolls, immediately put aside her displeasure and began to focus on watching Gohan clamp the doll. Gohan put his hand on the claw machine's joystick and tapped it casually. The claw of the claw machine accurately stopped above the doll that looked like Gohan. Then, Gohan decisively pressed the button. Chapter 343. Although Gohan was a great swordsman, or rather, a unique genius, Gohan was much more intelligent than ordinary people. In terms of intelligence, he could crush mortals, but in other aspects it was hard to say. At the very least, in terms of claw machines, Gohan was completely useless. Gohan grabbed the claw machine confidently for the first time, but he only touched the head of the claw machine, and then the claw machine quickly moved up, ending Gohan's first claw machine experience. The first time, test the position and feel, Gohan said calmly, as if everything was under his control. So, Gohan threw in the second coin, knocked it once, and directly lowered his claw. This time, the claw was a little further away from the first time. The first time, the claw touched the claw, but this time, it didn't even touch the claw. I have seen through the secret, humph. Gohan acted like a master, as if the previous two failures were just to pave the way for this one. Gohan knocked the control stick hard again, and was about to press the button. However, Gohan hesitated for a while, adjusted the control stick, and moved the claw a little before pressing the button. However, it didn't work, and the claw still couldn't touch the claw. Haha, interesting. The muscles on Gohan's face twitched unconsciously, and then he threw all the coins in his hand on the table. Damn it, I'm going all out this time. Song Yifei looked at the scene in front of her helplessly, and then looked at the time in her system. There was only 1.5 hours left before the assembly, but he was still standing in front of the claw machine. She had already helped Gohan change coins twice, and in more than an hour, Gohan had thrown more than 200 coins into the claw machine, but without exception, these coins didn't exchange for the claw machine that Gohan wanted. Instead, a large crowd surrounded Gohan. These people called their friends and watched Gohan's claw machine excitedly. When they heard that someone didn't succeed after more than 200 attempts, they all went up to watch happily, saying that it was the first time in their lives to see such a rare thing. More than 200 times, he should have caught 1 or 2 claw machines by pressing it randomly. Fortunately, Gohan wasn't famous in the real world, and the onlookers didn't know that Gohan was the military governor. Otherwise, tomorrow's headline would be like this: the biggest weakness of the God of War military governor, claw machine. Well, since Gohan won the challenge, some media that wanted to make a big news all added the title of God of War in front of Gohan's name, which meant that Gohan was the invincible god on the battlefield. However, most of the media didn't agree with this. They admitted that the military governor's commanding ability and fighting ability were amazing, but it was too much to call Gohan the God of War. Since the apocalypse, no sword-bearer had received the title of God of War. The Sword Committee had strict restrictions on the evaluation of sword-bearers, and titles such as God, Ancestor, and Saint were strictly restricted. Many Jindi couldn't get these 3 words in their lifetime. Since they were talking about the issue of the title, let's explain the sword-bearer's title and the title system. When a sword-wielder became a famed sword-wielder, they had the right to request a title from the Sword Committee, which was a combination of XX plus sword names. For example, the Heaven-Shrouding Sword Emperor's title, Heaven-Shrouding Sword, was a title she had requested from the Sword Committee after becoming a famed sword wielder. At famed sword level, the sword-bearer could have a title or not. It all depended on whether the sword-bearer applied for it or not. However, after the sword-bearer became a spirit sword level, a title was a must. If you didn't apply for it, the Sword Committee would force you to have a title. Once the title was forced by the Sword Committee, you didn't even have the right to change it. Unless you became a sword immortal, then you could change your title again. Therefore, sword-bearers would apply for a title when they became a famed sword level. Of course, this title couldn't be something like Invincible, Heaven-Conquering, or Heaven-Destroying. The Sword Committee would not approve such titles. If you gave such a stupid title, what would the sword-bearers of Immortal Sword level and Emperor Sword level do with it? If the title was still up for grabs, then the title of the title was completely up to the Sword Committee. Ordinary sword-bearers didn't have titles at all. Only those who had contributed to human society could be given titles. So far, there were less than 200 humans who had their own titles. It could be said that they were as rare as phoenix feathers and Qilin horns. The title was equivalent to the highest honor among humans. Humans with titles could enter the ancestral temple of the human race and enjoy the worship of millions of humans. There was once a person who said, "Life is what I want, and titles are what I want. If I can't have both, I'll give up my life for titles." From this, you can roughly see how awesome an honorific title is. Although there were only over 200 titles so far, these 200 titles were also divided into different levels. A title was made up of 2 words. The second word directly represented the title's level. For example, the 3 words swordsman, member, and man were the lowest level titles, and also the ones that were given out the most. Further up were the 3 words Wen, Wu, Shi, and Huang. Only the highest titles could use the 3 words ancestor, god, and sage. In the past 1,000 years, only 5 people had received these 3-word titles. Fleeting Calendar with the title Kanzu, Sky Shrouding Jiendi with the title Sky Sage, Jiangshan Jiendi with the title Great Sage, and the Sword Forger Gongshu Boer with the title Ancestor. It was said that the descendant of Yi Jin official was fighting for the title of Martial Saint for Gu Jin Jiendi. The Sword Committee said that they needed to hold a meeting to discuss this. But if nothing unexpected happened, Yi Jin official should be the fifth sword bearer after the apocalypse to receive the title Ancestor, God, and Sage. From this, it could be seen that if Gohan didn't become Jiendi, the title of God of War was out of the question. The intentions of the media, who deliberately gave Gohan the title of God of War, were questionable. It was obvious that they were trying to make Gohan look bad, but Gohan's fans were never tired of it. They all agreed that Gohan's title of God of War was well-deserved. Back to the small claw machine. When Song Yifei was worrying about how to take Gohan away from the claw machine, there was a burst of cheers from the crowd. "Great! I finally caught it!" Song Yifei raised his head and saw the claw machine grab a doll and throw it into the opening of the claw machine. Song Yifei let out a long sigh of relief. Now Gohan could leave. "Here, this is for you." Song Yifei was dazed. Then, a doll fell into Song Yifei's hand. Obviously, this was the doll that Gohan had just caught. Gohan spent so much time catching this doll just to give it to me? Song Yifei's mind went blank, and his heart was filled with sweetness. It seemed that even if he had to wait for a few more hours, even if he was late, it would not be a big deal. Gohan caught this doll just to give it to me. Should I take the initiative to kiss him back? Damn it, should I be more reserved? Song Yifei spent a long time thinking about these strange things in her head. Suddenly, she realized that the claw machine was still working, and the claw kept grabbing the dolls. What was going on? Hadn't he already caught it? Gohan, you're so stupid. It took you so much effort to catch a doll, but you still made a mistake. Gohan, you're so stupid. Ching Pin shouted. Song Yifei's face turned purple, and she was on the verge of losing her temper. She realized that Gohan had caught a doll that he didn't want before giving it to her. Song Yifei didn't care anymore. He pushed the crowd away and walked straight to Gohan's side. "Gohan, are you done yet? If you don't leave now, I'll complain to your master." Song Yifei said fiercely, "Gohan, are you done? If you don't leave now, I'll complain to your master." Sigh, Song Yifei is so sad. The only way to threaten Gohan is to complain to Lu Lei. No matter how I look at it, he is like the beautiful class monitor in high school who hates the male protagonist for not living up to her expectations. Yes, that's the setting. Did I fail after all? Gohan happened to throw the last coin into the claw machine. Of course, he still got nothing this time. So, do you still want me to change 100 coins for you? Song Yifei sneered. She had made up her mind that if Gohan asked her to change coins, she would directly reject Gohan and piss him off. Song Yifei was too kind. If it was someone else, she would have slapped Gohan in the face. No, I can't use this stupid method anymore. There's less than an hour left. Gohan shook his head. Song Yifei was even more annoyed now. Gohan didn't even have the chance to reject her. So what are you going to do? Smash this claw machine? Song Yifei said angrily. You're so smart. Gohan nodded. What the hell? Are you really going to smash the claw machine? Before Song Yifei could react, Gohan grabbed the poor man's neck and slashed at the glass of the claw machine. Then, the entire glass shattered into pieces like an explosion. Song Yifei's eyes were filled with disbelief as he looked at the claw machine. So cool. With this strike, Gohan's entire body instantly relaxed. What he wanted was this feeling. Chapter 344. The boss of the entertainment center looked at the claw machine in front of him with a pained heart. It was such a good claw machine, yet the glass was smashed just like that. He had been running the entertainment center for more than 10 years, but this was the first time he had met someone who smashed the glass because he couldn't catch a doll. This kind of person should all go to hell. The boss cursed in his heart. How much is this claw machine? Just as the boss was cursing in his heart, The criminal who smashed the glass of his claw machine lazily asked in a tone as if the claw machine was worthless. "Humph, I'm going to teach this kind of heartless person a lesson." The boss thought of this and decided to quote a price that would make the criminal regret for the rest of his life. "This claw machine is the latest model this year, and it costs 40,000 renminbi per unit." "Hey, isn't this machine 4,280 renminbi per unit?" Guhan said calmly after hearing the price the boss quoted. "This guy actually knows the real price of this machine." The boss was shocked. He suddenly felt that this criminal was not simple. He actually reported the price of this claw machine correctly. This person must be a professional who was proficient in claw machines. But why did such a person come to my place to smash the claw machine? Is he plotting against my entertainment center? I heard that old Wang's Kenzichi has long wanted to swallow up my shop to expand. Could it be that he was sent by old Wang to cause trouble? Could it be that my shop is involved in a game between big shots? Well, this boss is also a person who has read a lot of online novels. He directly came up with a large plot. Unfortunately, this is not an urban business novel. How do you know the price? What are you trying to do by coming here? The boss calmed himself down and asked with a lack of confidence. Is it difficult to know the price? Guhan pointed at the label of the claw machine and said, "Isn't it written here? Chibi Jendi claw machine, suggested retail price 4,280 renminbi." This was very embarrassing. The boss secretly decided that he would never buy claw machines produced by that factory again. 8,000 renminbi. The boss snorted. "You smashed my claw machine, so the dolls inside are useless. You have to compensate me along with the dolls. Otherwise, I will report you to the Commission for Discipline Inspection. Even if you are a swordsman, you can't damage private property on the street." The shop owner had a good plan. The claw machine could continue to be used as long as there was a piece of glass left. The repair fee would only be 1,000 yuan, and the remaining 7,000 yuan would be his net profit. His profits over the past few days were only 7,000 yuan. Although he knew that the boss was scamming him, Gu Han did not refute anything. Instead, he took the initiative to transfer 8,000 yuan to the boss's account. Gu Han, who had regained his composure, naturally knew that there was not much time left. He really did not have time to delay here. "Qinpin, these dolls are all yours. Go and keep them," Guhan said to Qinpin with a smile. Qinpin immediately cheered and jumped into the claw machine. He first took the doll that looked like Guhan, then quickly threw the rest of the dolls into Guhan's hands. Then, Guhan threw them into his dimensional pocket. "Hey, this is Je Tianjiandi's doll." Guhan felt that one of the dolls that Qinpin passed to him was very familiar. It looked like a chibi version of I Ching. Guhan took the doll in front of him and observed it carefully. The logo on the doll said chibi version of Shang Huang Haotianjiendi, His Majesty Chen Danqing, AD 2929 AD 3008. This doll was Haotianjiendi, who was dressed like a handsome male knight in an antique style. This Haotianjiendi, who was already in his 70s or 80s, was quite handsome when he was young. Wait. At this moment, cold sweat appeared on Guhan's forehead. He quickly picked up the other dolls and looked at the logo on them. They all had the honorific title of the original doll, as well as the year of their birth and death. This was a very normal thing. The children who got these dolls could understand the great history and legends of Jiendi through these dolls. However, why was there Haotian Jiendi among these dolls? Haotian Jiendi was a living Jiendi. Which doll manufacturer was so daring to make a QQ version of a living Jiendi doll and put it together with the dead dolls for people to pick up? This was courting death. This was a crime of great disrespect to the Sword Emperor. More importantly, Haotian Jiendi would still be alive tomorrow, but the label on the doll included his birth and death years. 2939 to 3008. This year would be the year 3007. Qinpin, let me see the doll in your hand. At this time, Qinpin had already swept away all the dolls in the claw machine. All the dolls had been put into Gohan's dimensional pocket. Only her favorite doll that looked like Gohan was left in her hand. Originally, Gohan thought that it was because of the cartoonish version of Yuan Ko that a certain Jiandi looked similar to her. However, when she saw the doll that even had the date of Haotian Jiandi's death marked, Gohan immediately became very interested and curious about this doll that looked like her. Could it be that this doll... Gohan took the doll that Qinpin handed over to him and carefully observed its appearance. He hadn't noticed it before, but now that he had a closer look, it was very similar. It was as if he had been carved out of the same mold as her. Moreover, there was an identical set of clothes that this doll was wearing in Gohan's wardrobe. Gohan immediately found the label of this doll. Different from the other labels that were full of information about Jiandi, this doll's label was empty except for a yellow P. On the front of this P there was a very strange smile. The round face of this expression was very cute. The curved lips were arrogant but not delicate. The slightly flushed cheeks made people feel infinite warmth. The right eyes were full of joy, which made people's imagination run wild. The slightly raised eyebrows hid the merits and reputation. Its function was so high that it could be used to describe all kinds of emotions, above from Baidu Encyclopedia. Gohan recognized this expression. This expression was very famous before the apocalypse. Archaeologists had already found pictures of this expression in countless ruins. Those archaeologists called this expression funny. There was something wrong with this doll. There was something wrong with this claw machine. This claw machine was connected to these dolls and appeared in front of him. There must be something wrong. Gohan furrowed his brows. He could already feel that he had mysteriously come to the Animation Entertainment City today, and mysteriously played with the claw machine, and mysteriously missed 300 times. It seemed like it wasn't a problem with his skills, but with the claw machine. All of this had been purposely arranged, and he had been tricked by a mastermind behind the scenes. Looks like I have to take this claw machine away too. With a thought, Gohan put the claw machine into his dimensional pocket, leaving the shocked owner behind. Anyway, he had spent 8,000 yuan, so it was reasonable for him to take this claw machine away. Your expression is very strange. Why do I feel that it's funny? Song Yifei felt that Gohan was very strange at this moment, and the word funny involuntarily popped up in his mind. Really? Gohan had a serious expression on his face. Forget it, we don't have much time left. Call Etian and Ming Yuan over, we have to go home and pack our things immediately. Alright, they finally knew that it was time to go home. How many chapters had they been playing outside? Gohan and Song Yifei were on an antique Three Kingdoms arcade machine, pulling Etian and Ming Yuan back from the fight. This was Gohan's first time seeing Ming Yuan. She was dressed in black, and her appearance was plain. She had an extremely ordinary appearance, but her face had a funny, oh no, a stubborn expression. Ming Yuan, although I lost to you this time, next time, this heroine will definitely win it all back. Just now, Etian and Ming Yuan seem to have been competing on an esports level. How many times has it been? Etian, you can't beat me, Ming Yuan replied proudly. Ming Yuan proudly replied. Gohan could clearly feel the burning fighting spirit in Ming Yuan. It seemed that Etian and Ming Yuan had already fought many times before this. These two fellows seemed to have a very deep friendship before this awakening. Thinking about it again, Etian and Bo Ri also had a long history. Gohan's sword lady and Song Yifei's sword lady were really fated. They had a deep bond. Etian, how many times have you lost to Ming Yuan? Gohan suddenly asked. Not many, less than 100 times. Etian answered straightforwardly, as if this wasn't a shameful thing. Sigh, it seems like the sword lady is like the master. We can more or less understand why Gohan's skill at catching dolls is so bad. It's not without reason. After leaving the entertainment city, Gohan and Song Yifei were squeezed by the surging crowd again. When they finally squeezed out of the CBD, they were shocked to find that they had one more thing on them. What is this? Song Yifei took out a flyer from his chest. This should have been placed on his chest by someone when they were being squeezed by the crowd. I have one here too. Gohan was also stuffed with a flyer. When he opened it, he saw that it was a promotional poster for a concert. Oh my god! Muse is holding a concert in Yuzhong City? Song Yifei was so excited that he covered his mouth. Tears were about to flow out. At this moment, Song Yifei was like a standard idol chef. What is Muse? Are they very famous? Gohan only cared about things related to strength. As for things like idols, Gohan had no interest in them at all. Muse is the greatest idol group of mankind. They are all idols made up of ancient sword bearers. They were originally a group of nameless sword bearers, but one day, on the way home, Gohan was brainwashed by Song Yifei with the story of Muse. It was as if he had entered a cult. Chapter 345. Along the way, Gohan finally returned to the entrance of Sankingshan district. He thought that he could separate from Song Yifei now, but the two of them lived in the same building. Which floor do you live on? Gohan suddenly asked when the two of them stood at the door of the corridor with a group of sword maidens behind them. He suddenly had an ominous premonition. I live on the third floor. Song Yifei's answer made Gohan completely speechless. It turned out that he and Song Yifei had become face-to-face neighbors. He really couldn't understand how they could be assigned to the same floor of the same house when he and Song Yifei became sword-bearers 1 or 2 weeks apart. Gohan didn't know that all the rooms in Sankingshan district were randomly assigned by the system. They were not arranged in order. So, Gohan and Song Yifei were really fated. They finally returned home. At this time, there were less than 50 minutes before the gathering. Although Gohan wasted a lot of time in the anime entertainment city, Wen Meiyun didn't waste any time. When Gohan returned home, Wen Meiyun had already packed enough lunchboxes for Gohan, Tian, and Qing Pin for a month. Wen Meiyun filled 3 new large plastic buckets with cooked rice, the kind that was 1 meter high and about half a meter in diameter. However, because the time was too tight, the dishes were a little monotonous. There were only 2 dishes, one was green vegetables with oil and the other was braised pork. When Meiyun knew that Qing Pin's appetite was amazing, so she specially prepared 10 large plastic buckets. Being able to fill these buckets with braised pork in just a few hours, Wen Meiyun was really a very useful maid. For the first time, Gohan completely felt the importance of Wen Meiyun to him. You too, if there's anything you want to bring, put it into your own scabbards. This trip will probably take at least 2 weeks or so. Especially your clothes, pack them yourselves. Don't leave everything to Meiyun. As a result, the two of them went to pack up their own things. Gohan looked at the empty living room, and his heart skipped a beat. It seems that I have missed something? Oh right. Where is Gu Yun? Gohan suddenly remembered that Gu Yun hadn't returned home yet. Too many inexplicable things had happened in the entertainment city just now, so much so that Gohan didn't realize that Gu Yun hadn't followed him back. Etienne, where's Gu Yun? Gohan immediately ran to Etienne's bedroom door and directly pushed it open, then closed it with a bang. Good heavens, Etienne was changing her clothes in the room. She had just put on a new pair of underwear. Etienne's perfectly round but was right in front of Gohan's eyes. Her legs were slightly separated, and the dark forest between her thighs rippled. That place was so mysterious and so desirable. Gulp! Gohan swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and his lower body inevitably swelled up again. What's wrong? Do you need something from me? Etienne directly opened the door and looked at Gohan, who was standing at the door with a slightly red face. She yawned as if nothing had happened, then looked at Gohan with a teasing gaze. What's wrong? Didn't you enjoy it just now? Do you want to come into my room? I'll let you take a closer look. You can also touch it. Guhan would only enter Tion's room if he fell on his head. Moreover, now was not the time to think about these things. Before leaving, he had to find Gu Yun and hand her over to Wen Meiyun to take care of. I'm sorry about what happened just now, but I'm very anxious now. Gu Yun went out with you, where is she now? Guhan asked anxiously. Isn't Gu Yun also in that entertainment city? Tion patted her head. Oh no, this heroine was so focused on the competition with Ming Yuan that I actually didn't notice where Gu Yun ran off to. It's not your fault, I was too careless. Guhan sighed and told Tion to look for Song Yifei later. After asking her to help him carry all his luggage and bento with his dimensional pocket, he immediately rushed out of the room to look for Gu Yun. 20 minutes later, Guhan once again returned to the Heroes of Heaven and Earth Entertainment City. Guhan walked around the entire entertainment city, but did not find any trace of Gu Yun. It seemed that Gu Yun was no longer in the entertainment city. Guhan was never worried that Qingpin would get lost, because there was a sword mark between Qingpin and Guhan. Guhan could easily sense Qingpin's location through the sword mark. As long as he followed the sword mark, he would be able to find Qingpin, just like the first time he met Gu Yun. But Gu Yun was different. Gu Yun was just an ordinary human. There was no such thing as a sword mark between Guhan and Gu Yun, so Guhan could only use the most primitive method to search for his sister. Therefore, Guhan went straight to the front desk of the entertainment city, found the boss who was browsing the web in front of the computer, and asked to check the video of the entertainment city in the past few hours. Who are you? Why should I show it to you? The boss replied to Guhan with a face full of displeasure. He did not seem to recognize Guhan, at least he had forgotten that he had just earned a whole 8,000 yuan from Guhan as compensation. My sister has gone missing in your entertainment city. I have to find her now. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the wrath of a sword wielder of the artifact sword rank, Guhan said coldly. His tone was so cold that the boss couldn't help but shrink his neck. He immediately agreed to Guhan's request to check the video. If something really happened to the sword wielder's sister in his store, then even if the sword wielder tore down his store, the discipline committee probably wouldn't do anything to the sword wielder. The unlucky one would be the boss. Therefore, the boss immediately pulled up the video of the past few hours. Very quickly, Guhan found the video of Qingpin and the others entering the entertainment city. At this time, Gu Yun was indeed following Qingpin and the others. She was even being hugged by Hanya, kissing and nibbling on her. This Hanya was really a lolicon. Next, Tion and Ming Yuan went straight to the gaming equipment that allowed two players to play and compete. Hanya brought Qingpin and Gu Yun to wander around, occasionally playing games like Taiko Darin and the others. After a long time, when Qingpin's attention was attracted by the claw clamping machine, the situation changed. Gu Yun seemed to want to go to the toilet, so she left Hanya and ran into the toilet. At this time, Hanya and Qingpin's attention was completely attracted by the claw clamping machine, so the three of them separated. A few minutes later, Gu Yun came out of the toilet, but she didn't go back to find Qingpin and Hanya. Instead, she looked around in confusion, especially at the entrance, and immediately rushed out of the door. Just like that, the camera lost track of Gu Yun. Without saying anything, Guhan immediately asked the boss to pull up the video of the entertainment city's entrance. He saw Gu Yun hugging the thigh of a black-haired twin-tailed girl wearing sunglasses and a mask. He didn't know what they were talking about, but she looked very excited. The girl who was being hugged by Gu Yun looked very helpless. The other two girls beside her, also wearing sunglasses and masks, were desperately trying to say something to Gu Yun, but Gu Yun just wouldn't let go of her thigh. The three girls and Gu Yun entangled for a while, and after attracting a lot of attention, they seemed to have no choice but to compromise. The four of them said something and left the location of the camera. Throughout the whole process, Gu Yun didn't let go of the twin-tailed girl's thigh. Yes, she hugged a good thigh. Let's go. Gohan looked at the time. There were less than 20 minutes left before the final gathering. He had to find Gu Yun quickly and bring her back. Therefore, Gohan left the heroes of Heaven and Earth Entertainment City without saying goodbye, leaving the bewildered boss alone to stare at the video Gohan had just played. He muttered to himself as he watched. Strange, this claw clamping machine. Did I have such a claw clamping machine in my store? The boss was looking at the video of Ching Pin and Hanya talking around the claw clamping machine. He didn't remember having such a claw clamping machine in his store at all. After coming out of the Heroes Entertainment City, Gohan immediately grabbed the extension of the building's wall and jumped to the second floor of the building. With such a huge flow of people, it was impossible to see clearly on the ground. He could only find traces of Gu Yun from a high place, especially the three girls who left with Gu Yun. Whether it was their hairstyle or clothes, they were very distinctive. In particular, their sunglasses and masks were even more conspicuous. They were the easiest people to find in the crowd. At this time, Gu Yun had already left the entrance of the entertainment city for more than 50 minutes. Obviously, these people should have gone far away. It was impossible for them to still stay nearby. Gohan was like Spider-Man, jumping around the second floor of various buildings. Many of the places where he landed were several meters or even about 10 meters apart. Some places where he landed could only fit half a foot, but Gohan still passed through as if there was nothing there, attracting the attention of the crowd on the road. Some even took out their personal terminals and began to record. Gohan walked almost the entire commercial street, but he didn't find any trace of the three girls in sunglasses at all. Don't doubt Gohan's eyesight. If Gohan said no, then no. Could it be that they have already left the CBD? Gohan lowered his head and pondered. If they had really left the CBD, then it would be troublesome. The core area was so big. It would be impossible to find them without spending a few hours. If they took Gu Yun to their homes, then it would be even more impossible to find them. He could only ask the police for help. But with the efficiency of the police, it would be impossible to find Gu Yun today. You have a communication from Tomono Kakashi. Would you like to connect? Suddenly, such a prompt came from Gohan's personal terminal. It was Tomono Kakashi, the highest artificial intelligence. Mr. Gohan, are you performing acrobatics? On the other end of the communication, Tomono Kakashi said with a smile, there are already no less than 10 videos that have been uploaded to the video website. If I didn't give you an artificial top to increase the popularity of these videos? Nina-chan, I was planning to look for you. Gohan sighed. Can you do me a favor? Chapter 346. Gohan had no choice but to look for Tomono Kakashi. If there was anyone in the world who knew everyone's whereabouts like the back of her hand, it would only be Tomono Kakashi, the artificial intelligence. As the server terminal that managed all personal terminals, if Tomono Kakashi wanted to find someone in the city, as long as the person's personal terminal was still on him, he would not be able to escape Tomono Kakashi's eyes. So you're jumping from building to find your sister. Tomono Kakashi suddenly realized. However, after listening to Gohan's request, Tomono Kakashi felt a little awkward. Strange, according to the information, isn't your sister dead? Why is she still alive? She's my god sister, Gohan said without changing his expression. Even if Gohan said that Gu Yun had come back to life, Tomono Kakashi would not believe him. This is a little troublesome. Your sister doesn't seem to be carrying a personal terminal with her. Tomono, I can't find your sister's whereabouts. Indeed, if a person did not wear a personal terminal, even the highest level of artificial intelligence would not be able to do anything. Nina-chan, you can look for the whereabouts of the 3 women who were with my sister just now. I think the 4 of them are still together. Even if they are separated, they should know where my sister went. Okay, Tomono will look for you. Tomono Kakashi answered very quickly. A few seconds later, Tamono Kakazi once again replied to Gohan helplessly, "The personal terminals of those 3 girls are all SS-level confidential terminals. If I want to look for their whereabouts, I will definitely be discovered by the humans who are monitoring me. I'm sorry, Tamono has no legitimate reason to explain to them why I want to look for their whereabouts." I see. Gohan could understand Tamono Kakazi. Tamono Kakazi, who was monitored by humans as a time bomb that could explode at any time, needed a legitimate reason to do anything. Otherwise, Tamono Kakazi would get into a lot of trouble. Tamono Kakazi did not need to take such a risk at all. "Then, can you look at the surveillance videos of all the surveillance cameras around here?" Gohan thought for a while and made a new suggestion. "If you can't look at their location directly, then you can look at the surveillance cameras and find out where they last disappeared. That way you can find them." "That's not a problem. I can look at hundreds of thousands of surveillance videos every day. I don't think it will attract the attention of those white snakes." The white snakes that Tamono Kakazi mentioned were naturally the scientists in white coats who were responsible for monitoring her. From this title, it could be seen that Tamono Kakazi did not have a good impression of these scientists at all. Unlike Gohan, who had to use his eyes to look at the videos frame by frame, the highest-level artificial intelligence could look through thousands of videos at the same time. Soon, Tamono Kakazi found clues about Gu-yun and the 3 girls. "Hey, they're right under your feet," Tamono Kakazi said cheerfully. "They're drinking coffee in a cafe under your feet. They're in private room 051. "Thank you, Jina-chan. I owe you one." Gohan thanked Tamono Kakazi seriously and jumped directly to the window on the 2nd floor. Amidst the exclamations of the nearby tourists, he barged into the mall. This was a traditional mall, which was the style of the mall before the apocalypse. It was not like the malls in the common district where people could quickly buy and try on clothes. In this mall, there were also many small restaurants for the passers-by to take a rest. Soon, Gohan found a cafe called by Ning. The environment of this cafe was not bad, but the space was a little small, and the prices were frighteningly high. Looking at the price board at the front desk, a cup of ordinary latte cost $300. Therefore, this shop could be said to have very few customers. "Hello, sir. What would you like to drink?" The waiter saw Gohan walk in and immediately asked. In the core district, there was no such thing as looking down on others. After all, those who could survive in the core district were either sword-bearers or relatives of sword-bearers. They were not people to be trifled with. "Don't worry about me, I'm looking for someone." Gohan did not even look at the waiter. His eyes swept around and found private room 501. After all, this cafe did not have much space, and the location of the private room was very conspicuous. "Sir, without the guest's permission, you can't go in." Seeing that Gohan was about to barge into private room 501, the waiter immediately went to stop him. However, this was of no use to Gohan. Gohan directly pushed open the door of private room 501. A series of screams rang out from within the room. The plot seemed to be a repeat of the previous Heavenly Sword. Among the 3 girls, one of them had brown hair and green eyes. Her long hair reached her waist, and she was currently taking off her top. Her chest, which was as round as a papaya, was bouncing up and down in a deep purple lace bra. After discovering that Gohan had barged into the private room, the frightened girl's opi began to shake violently. It felt like 2 huge elastic balls were shaking up and down at high speed, creating waves. This chest was at least a G cup, however. Gohan's attention was not on this pair of strange rulers at all. Gohan's attention was already attracted by Gu-yun, who was sitting on the chair. She was holding a long sori in her hand and was happily munching on it. This was really strange. Which cafe started selling sori? Alright, these were all minor details. Gohan looked at the time. There were still 5 minutes left before the gathering time. If he flew from here to the parking lot, he might be able to make it in time. Gu Yun, follow big brother home. Guhan grabbed Gu Yun's neck and wanted to bring her back. No, no. Gu Yun still has things to do. Gu Yun doesn't want to go home now. Gu Yun waved her arms and legs, trying to break free from Guhan. Of course, with Gu Yun's strength, this was impossible. Gu Yun, who was grabbed by the neck, was like a cat that had completely lost its ability to move, just like Qing Pin. Stop! You can't take this child away. Seeing Gu Yun struggle, a strong girl with long blue and black hair who was sitting next to Gu Yun stood up and grabbed Guhan's wrist. He did not expect this girl to be so strong. She grabbed Guhan's wrist so hard that it hurt. This kind of strength was no less than the strength of a sword wielder. I'm her brother. Why can't I take my sister away? Guhan glared at the girl. If I wasn't in a hurry, I would still pursue the crime of child trafficking. We're child trafficking? She's the one who has been pestering us. Among the three girls, the last girl with yellow hair stood up angrily. It's your sister who has been pestering Sister Shi and won't let go. She even spilled coffee all over Sister Shi's body. If you're really this girl's brother, then please compensate us for our material and mental damages. Hearing this girl's words, Guhan's face twitched. No wonder he saw this G-cup girl changing her clothes as soon as he came in. It was his sister who spilled coffee on her. I'll compensate you. Guhan decided to solve this problem with money, just like he did in the anime city. Is 10,000 renminbi enough to compensate you? Are you kidding me? Big Sister Shi's clothes are from the Xiaomi brand. The yellow-haired girl said with a face full of contempt. The Xiaomi brand clothes were not something that could be bought with just 10 or 20,000 RMB. It cost more than 100,000 RMB per piece. However, less than 10 pieces were sold every time they went on sale. Within a few minutes, they were all sold out on the official website. The clothes that her big sister Shi was wearing were bought at a high price from a scalper. She really could not understand why those scalpers always had an endless supply of Xiaomi clothes. The girl with yellow hair wanted to say something, but she was stopped by Sister Shi, who had put on the clothes again and hid the G-cup behemoth again. There's nothing wrong with this clothes. You can wear it after washing it. There's no need for them to compensate us. Sister Shi spoke very calmly, but her face was indeed flushed. She remembered that her treasure, which had never been seen by a man, had been seen halfway by an inexplicable man today. This sister She could not help but feel hot all over. She was so unlucky. Even if he went swimming, he would wear a one-piece swimsuit. Sir, I don't need you to compensate us with anything, but you must prove that this child is your sister. Otherwise, we won't let you take this child away. This G-cup girl looked like a good person. Although such an expensive dress was dirted, her first concern was the safety of the child and the true identity of Guhan. She was a responsible and good child. In the face of such a girl, Guhan was embarrassed to use force. He looked at the time again. At this time, there were less than 3 minutes before the gathering. It seemed that he would be late. Ask her yourself if I am her brother. Guhan lifted Gu Yun from his hand and let her answer this question herself. Yes, he is my Guhan, the biological kind. Gu Yun replied miserably. Okay, can we go now? Guhan carried Gu Yun back into his arms and then raised his wrist that was grabbed by the blue-black girl. Please let go of your hand. After all, men and women should not touch each other. Rascal, the three girls had this word in their hearts at the same time. But after they looked at each other, they helplessly let go of Guhan. Since this child had admitted it, they could not stop Guhan from taking Gu Yun away. After all, since they were entangled by Gu Yun, they were very troubled. They were about to send her to the police station and let the police find this girl's relative. Unexpectedly, her brother came looking for her. Wait, brother, Gu Yun still has something to do. Can you let Gu Yun finish it? Have you forgotten? You said before that you would treat Gu Yun well for the rest of your life. You would never bully your baby sister. Gu Yun cried. Hearing Gu Yun say this, Gohan had no choice but to stop. Gohan did say this before. That was a week before the invasion. Gohan had promised his sister that he wanted to buy a doll but did not have the money. What else do you have to do? Gohan sighed. Since he was already late, it did not matter if he was a little late. It's with her. Gu Yun suddenly turned her head and pointed at the dumbfounded sister Shi. On her leg, there is something that belongs to Gu Yun. That thing is very important to Gu Yun. Gu Yun must get it. On her leg? Gohan looked down. This sister Shi's leg was wrapped in a pair of sexy black stockings and a pair of gorgeous black boots. If there was a place on her leg that could hide something, it could only be hidden in her boot. Ding dong, you have a message. Please check it. At this moment, a message from Song Yifei was sent to Gohan's personal terminal. There were only 10 words in the message. Spiritual sword is very angry. The consequences are very serious. There's no other way. I can't waste any more time. Gohan sighed and put Gu Yun on a coffee table. Then, he sprinted forward and directly hugged Sister Shi's waist before the 3 women could react. Then, one hand went in between Sister Shi's thighs and directly hugged her plump chest. His palm moved down along Sister Shi's chest. Because of the smooth stockings, Gohan's hand was like a swimming fish, caressing all the way to Sister Shi's beautiful legs without any obstruction. Finally, his palm went deep into her boots and pulled out a dagger with a cold glint. It's this. This is what Gu Yun wants. Seeing Gohan pull out the dagger, Gu Yun clapped her hands happily. It's not a good thing for a girl to carry a dagger with her. I'll buy this dagger. I'll transfer the cost to you later. Goodbye. With that, Gohan left with Gu Yun like a gust of wind. From the moment Gohan put down Gu Yun, to the moment he picked up Sister Shi's body, to the moment he played with Sister Shi's beautiful leg, to the moment he took the dagger from her boot, the entire process took less than 10 seconds. It was only after Gohan left that the 3 confused girls finally reacted. Little bird, Highway, have I been molested? Sister Shi asked as if she was still dreaming. Yes. The 2 of them answered in unison. Chapter 347. By the time Gohan reached the meeting point as fast as he could, he was already 8 minutes late. The meeting point was a large parking lot in the core area, the same parking lot that Gohan and Class 22694 had used when they went out for a mission. In fact, basically all the sword bearers would depart from this parking lot. Apart from this parking lot, there were no other private parking lots or parking spaces in the core area. Most of the roads in the core area were also closed to cars. There was only one main road that was directly connected to the outside of the city. The reason for this was that the roads in the core area had been compressed to the point of being extremely narrow. At most, it was only wide enough for a car to pass through. This was because all the land in the core area had to be given to buildings as much as possible, and things like wide roads were too luxurious for humans. Moreover, the core area had a high population density, and the accident rate was also very high. Other than the main road that led out of the city, no other roads were allowed for cars to pass through. When Gohan found Song Yifei, she was standing there with a bitter expression. Behind her were her own sword maidens Hanya and Ming Yuan, as well as Gohan's 2 sword maidens, Qin Pin and Etian. Other than that, there was also a middle-aged man with a gloomy expression standing beside Song Yifei. This man's hair was golden, and he had a large aquiline nose. Other than that, the rest of his physical characteristics were basically the same as a Chinese human. It seemed that this man was a mixed-blood human. You're Gohan, right? When the aquiline nose saw Gohan walk over, he immediately stared at Gohan with an expression as if his mother had died and said in a strange tone, "You're amazing, no one has ever dared to make me wait for them." Next, the aquiline nose reprimanded Gohan for being late for more than 20 minutes. Every reprimand carried a feeling of insult without any profanity. It felt like he was the teacher in charge of a middle school or high school, and Gohan was like a bad student who did not like to study. Throughout the process of teaching Gohan a lesson, Gohan did not refute a single word. He only lowered his head and listened obediently. This was because Gohan noticed that behind this hook-nosed man were 4 beautiful girls with different appearances. However, these girls' gazes were dull and their bodies were motionless, and they lacked the spirituality that humans should have. These girls were most likely not normal humans, but sword maidens or even man-made sword maidens. This was because only man-made sword ladies would have such a dull expression. Man-made sword ladies did not have souls. At this time, there was no one else present. In other words, this hook-nosed man was actually a spirit sword-level sword wielder. No wonder he dared to speak to Gohan in such an aggressive and nasty manner. With the strength of a spirit sword master, Gohan was reprimanded until he couldn't say anything, and didn't even have the will to refute. Students who had been reprimanded by the teacher in charge knew that talking back to the teacher in charge was the worst thing to do. If it was not done properly, they might be punished physically or have their parents called in. The best way was to lower their head and let the teacher vent his anger. After all, the teacher had to go home after work. Would he scold you until the night? When the hook-nosed man was reprimanding him, Gohan also roughly understood why the hook-nosed man was here. It turned out that he was sent by Lu Lei to escort Gohan, Song Yifei, and Ku Rock-in all the way. The journey to Chongyang Mountain was about 1,600 kilometers. In this 1,600 kilometers, except for a few beacon towers near Yuzhong, there were no other traces of human activity. This way they would pass through the territory of Yuan-Ko, and there was no lack of some powerful nether-level or meteor-level Yuan-Ko's territory. If they were unlucky, it was not impossible to encounter a universe-level Yuan-Ko. If Gohan and the other 2 sword-bearers were alone, the probability of them coming back alive was estimated to be less than 20%. Gohan and Song Yifei were the elites of Yuzhong City, and they were talents with great potential who might take over the position of Lu Lei and Daolis Immortal Sword in the future. They were completely different from ordinary sword bearers. It was impossible for the 2 sword immortals to let them take such a big risk. Therefore, the 2 simply assigned a spirit sword-level sword bearer, which was this hook-nosed man, to accompany Gohan and the other 2 to Chongyang Mountain. With the protection of a spirit sword-level sword bearer, and 2 immortal sword-level sword bearers who could cross the void to save their lives at any time, the safety of Gohan and the others should still be guaranteed. However, this hook-nosed man seemed to be a little dissatisfied with being assigned such a task. Come to think of it, he, a dignified spirit sword-level sword bearer, was actually assigned to protect the safety of a few sword bearers at the treasure sword level. In particular, Lu Lei had specifically told him that the 3 sword-bearers were the future of Yuzhong City. This made the hook-nosed man even more unhappy. Why didn't anyone tell him that he was the future of Yuzhong City when he was still a sword-bearer? When he was risking his life, why didn't anyone arrange for a spirit sword-level sword-bearer to protect him? Although he was full of complaints, the hook-nosed man could not refuse the task assigned by the sword immortals, so he could only pinch his nose and agree. On the other hand, he vented his anger on Gohan, who asked Gohan to be late. Fortunately, someone soon rescued Gohan from the abyss of suffering. Ku Rock-in with a red sun slowly walked over. He came alone, and there was no sword maiden behind him. However, there were 2 swords in the 2 scabbards on his back. It seemed that he did not release his sword maiden, unlike Gohan and Song Yifei. Lurin, when will you change your temper? The hook-nosed man frowned and reprimanded. Although he was half an hour later than Gohan, the hook-nosed man's attitude towards Ku Rock-in was much better. After all, he was the son of Ju Wudao, the son of the chairman of the Yuzhong City Sword Committee. Let's talk about it after you change your bad temper. Ku Rock-in had no respect for the hook-nosed man. He looked at him, as if he was looking at a passer-by. This was a great insult to a spirit sword-level sword-bearer. According to the etiquette between sword-bearers, the lower-level sword-bearer must maintain respect for the higher-level sword-bearer, unless the lower-level sword-bearer was much older than the higher-level sword-bearer. "Ku-rak-in, you!" The hook-nosed man's face turned red, and he was ready to start educating Ku-rak-in to let him know how powerful he was. "Hawk, if you dare to say a word of nonsense to me, I'll leave now and let that old fart Ju Wudao find a third person to go to this Chongyang mountain. I, Ku-rak-in, will never step out of Yuzhong City even if I die." Ku-rak-in seemed to have guessed that the hook-nosed man was going to start lecturing him, so he simply threw a cold sentence at him. The hook-nosed man was so angry that his face looked as if he had eaten dozens of Mexican chili peppers, but in the end, he couldn't say a word. Before he came, Ju Wudao specifically told him to take good care of Ku-rak-in and that Ku-rak-in must reach Chongyang Mountain. When the hook-nosed man was young, he received a lot of care from Ju Wudao, so he couldn't refuse Ju Wudao's request. For the hook-nosed man, Ku-rak-in was like a hot potato, like his ancestor. What an idiotic idiot! Gohan, who saw all this, sneered in his heart. He also had some speculations about Ku-rak-in's mentality. This Ju Luren was obviously a guy who had rebelled to the extreme under Ju Wudao's protection. Perhaps because his parents had neglected to take care of him when he was young, he had developed hatred for his parents and was filled with rebelliousness. With a little bit of strength, he felt that the world owed him something, that this world was not the world he wanted, and so on. He even deliberately talked back to some elders and went against some powerful people, thinking that it was cool and different, like a hero who could get rid of the control and shadow of his parents. In reality, he was still a piece of trash who lived under the shadow of his parents' power. If his father was not Ju Wudao, the hook-nosed man would have kicked this idiot away. Hearing Ku-rak-in's tone, Gohan wanted to kick him away. This kind of person was the biggest headache for a team. He would often not listen to orders and do inexplicable things, then put the whole team in danger. All the plots in the stories were like this. In fact, Gohan's premonition was very accurate. "All of you, get in the car. We're leaving." The hook-nosed man, who was also the Eagle Cat that Ku-rak-in called, and whose official title was the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit, tapped on his personal terminal, and the ground opened up. After a series of complicated mechanical movements, a hovercraft the size of a large bus rose from the ground. This was the vehicle that Gohan and Song Yifei would use to travel to Chongyang Mountain. A hovercraft that looked like a bus was specially designed for long-distance team travel and battles. It could travel more than 10,000 kilometers with a full fuel charge. There were also various monitoring devices for Yuan Ko inside the vehicle, as well as a complete set of furniture and daily necessities. It looked like a caravan before the apocalypse, but in terms of exquisiteness, it was far better than a caravan. The hovercraft stopped on the ground, and the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit directed Ku-rak-in, Gohan and the others to enter the caravan. There were 5 rooms in the caravan, and the room near the front of the car, which included the driver's seat, was the largest and best. Naturally, this was Eagle Cat's room. Ku-rak-in was the first to jump into the caravan, and directly took the room at the back of the caravan. This room was the second largest room, and according to traditional etiquette, this room should be given to a girl like Song Yifei. However, Ku-rak-in obviously did not have such awareness, and naturally took the room. Song Yifei chose the room near the front of the car. Helplessly, Gohan could only be placed between Song Yifei and Ku-rak-in. Song Yifei was probably disgusted with Ku-rak-in, which was why she did not want to be placed next to his room. Eagle Cat did not delay, and after everyone had boarded, the hovercraft began to move. At this time, Gohan knocked on Eagle Cat's door. "What's the matter?" Eagle Cat opened the door unhappily, and saw Gohan carrying Gu Yun at the door. "Senior Eagle Cat, my sister is just a normal human. She got lost just now, and I was late because I was looking for her. So, you're here to tell me that I shouldn't have criticized you just now? Eagle Cat lit up a cigarette and took a deep puff. No, Senior Eagle Cat's teachings are all correct, and I have no reason to waste everyone's time. I'm here to find Senior Eagle Cat, so you can stop the car at the third junction. It's very close to my house, and I want to let my sister go home. She's just a normal human, and she can't go with us. Oh! Eagle Cat's sword spirit blew out a ring of smoke, and blew it all on Gohan's face. No, go away. Chapter 348. In that case, Xiaoxi's chest was seen by that man. In a super-large room, 9 girls of different styles were fooling around. They formed a circle and surrounded Sister Shi, desperately asking her about what had just happened. That's right. You guys don't know this, but not only Sister Shi's chest, even her legs were touched by that man. The pair Yellow Konoha Minami went to Tojo Shi's side and hugged one of her thighs. Then, she happily rubbed herself against Tojo Shi's stocking thighs and said with an intoxicated expression, "Just like this. There's more, there's more." Denen Miki also joined in the fun. She grabbed one of Tojo Shi's feet and touched her ankle. Then, she raised her hand. Clang! That man pulled out a dagger. You guys! Although there were 2 girls desperately trying to grope her, Tojo Shi did not seem to be disgusted. Instead, she looked like she was enjoying it. Alright, you two, let go of Xiaoxi. A blonde Russian girl, Iase Eri, separated Konoha Minami and Denen Miki and rescued Tojo Shi, who still wanted more. Iase Eri lived up to her name as the most prestigious person in the group. With just a word from her, the other 8 girls all obeyed her orders. This matter is not a joke. Our Xiaoxi was indeed molested by a pervert. I think we should immediately report this to the police and let them handle this matter. We can't let Xiaoxi suffer such grievances. That's right. That's right. We must teach that pervert a lesson. The girls began to reprimand the pervert, Guhan, and expressed their determination to fight against Guhan's evil influence. They wanted to avenge Higo Hiroshi, who had been molested. No, we can't call the police. Everyone expressed their agreement. Only the victim, Tojo Shi, firmly refused. As the brains and demon king of Muse's group, Tojo Shi was always the most rational girl in the group. She knew how to take care of her younger sisters. Everyone, listen to me. Although Muse has gained some fame in recent years, any idol group can't afford to be hurt by a scandal. If we report this to the police, then it will definitely be leaked. At that time, no matter if we are wronged or not, Muse will suffer a lot of pressure and losses. So we can't do this. We can't report this to the police, and we can't let the media know about this. God knows how the unscrupulous media will turn this into. Tojo Kiki's words made a lot of sense. That was how the media worked. Good friends drinking tea could be made up into a secret relationship. Quarreling meant severing ties. Unfollowing someone on Weibo meant that a divorce was imminent. In short, no matter what the media said, if you didn't feed them with public relations beforehand, all sorts of irresponsible news would make you vomit blood. Even if it was proven that what they said was wrong, they would still argue that this was freedom of the press and that it was none of their business. Then what should we do? Are we going to let Xiaoxi be wronged? I won't do it. We can't let Xiaoxi be wronged. Yeah, Sister Shi has been humiliated so badly. We must teach that man a lesson. Alright. Everyone, listen to me. I don't want to let that pervert off the hook. We can't do anything to him on the surface, but can't we deal with him in secret? Tojo Kiki said with a strange smile on her face. So, you can only bring Gu Yun along. In the maglev bus, Gohan and Song Yifei were sitting at a table by the window, drinking tea. These were the precious tea leaves that Song Yifei had brought along. Gohan didn't have the time to bring these things. He usually only drank plain water. He had no interest in things like tea leaves. I don't have a choice. The Eagle Cat Sword Spirit doesn't allow me to get off. If I force myself to get off, I'll have no choice but to destroy this hovercraft. Actually, when the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit rejected him, Gu Han had already wanted to destroy the hovercraft and send Gu Yun back. However, after giving it some thought, Gu Han gave up on that idea. First of all, if Gu Han really did do that, not only would he have to pay the compensation for the hovercraft, but the sword would also be like a slap to the Eagle Cat's face. With the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit's displeasure, Gu Han had no doubt that the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit would teach him a harsh lesson. Teaching him a lesson would be considered a light punishment, and the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit might just quit. When the Sword Spirit expressed that he had rejected the mission because he had been humiliated, even Lu Lei and Zhu Wudao couldn't force the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit to turn back. That would incur the displeasure of the other Sword Spirit. At that time, Gu Han's impression in Lu Lei's heart would definitely become very bad. Second, after thinking about it carefully, Gu Han realized that the inside of the bus wasn't as dangerous as he had imagined. With the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit guarding the bus, ordinary Yuan Ko wouldn't be able to do anything to it. Even if Gu Han entered the Changyang Mountain, he could still hand Gu Yun over to the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit. Since the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit refused to bring Gu Yun home, he had to be responsible for Gu Yun's safety. If a sword spirit couldn't protect an ordinary person, then the Eagle Cat Sword Spirit would never be able to hold its head up high. I hope nothing bad happens. Song Yifei's expression was a little worried, excited, and nervous. She kept taking small sips of the teacup in her hand as she looked at the scenery outside the window. All kinds of emotions were mixed in her heart, and she couldn't tell what she was feeling. This was actually the first time Song Yifei had left Yuzhang City. She hadn't even attended a single class at Yuzhang University before she was forced to go to the Changyang Mountain by Zhu Wudao. At least Gu Han had attended a few classes and had some close contact and combat experience with the real Yuan Ko in Mei Ling. Song Yifei was a little lamb who had never experienced anything, so she was extremely nervous, excited, and uneasy at this time. She had been sleeping in the car for the past few days, and it was estimated that Song Yifei would not be able to sleep at all. Gu Han, where are we now? Have we left the absolute safety zone of Yuzhang City? Song Yifei asked curiously as she looked at the fast-moving scenery outside the window. We should be out of the absolute safety zone. Gu Han carefully observed the scenery outside. The originally endless fields of wheat had disappeared without a trace, and were replaced by open spaces and diamond-shaped fortresses that appeared from time to time in the open spaces. These fortresses were the beacon towers of Yuzhang City. According to the rules of Yuzhang City, a beacon tower had to be set up every 20 kilometers, and there would be 2 sword bearers and 10 ordinary people stationed in it for a long time. Once they found any abnormalities in the vicinity, the sword bearers in the beacon towers had to respond immediately. If there were only a few Yuan Ko's abnormalities, the sword bearers had to leave the beacon tower and kill all the Yuan Ko's in their area of control. If they found a large number of Yuan Ko's, they had to contact the nearby teams of sword bearers, and at the same time, they had to guard the beacon tower and wait for the sword bearers to rescue them. If the number of Yuan Hun increased to the point that it could be described as a division, then the members of these beacons would have to report the news to Yuzhang City and the other beacons in the rear. Then, all the members of these beacons would have to immediately leave their own beacons and head for the largest fortress nearby. They would have to defend the fortress and block the Yuan Hun's attack while waiting for Yuzhang City to send out a large number of sword beacons to destroy this division. If the number of Yuan Ko's was even larger, to the extent that they covered the mountains and plains, or even to the extent of a large-scale invasion, all the beacon towers would immediately retreat to Yuzhang City and use the strength of Yuzhang City to defend. Although Yuzhong City had calculated the most detailed plan for the beacon towers to protect the lives of the people in the beacon towers had still become the most dangerous job in Yuzhong City. The sword bearers working in the beacon towers would always lose their lives due to all kinds of unexpected situations. According to statistics, about 1,000 to 2,000 sword bearers died in the beacon towers every year. In the 8 cities of the world, there were only about 200,000 sword bearers. Every year, the number of sword bearers who died in the beacon towers reached 1% of the total number of sword bearers. This 1% was not an insignificant number. After all, the average lifespan of a sword bearer was about 35 years old. 1% multiplied by 35 was 35%. In other words, about 35% of sword bearers died in the beacon towers. Hence, the beacon towers became the last place sword bearers wanted to stay. The Sword Council had no choice but to order the sword bearers who had made mistakes to enter the beacon towers to defend against their crimes. In short, if they could see the beacon towers, it meant that the hovercraft had officially left the absolute safety zone of Yuzhong City and entered a relatively safe zone. After entering this zone, they could see Yuan Ko's at any time. For example, the moment Song Yifei finished speaking, a battle took place in front of Gu Han's eyes. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.